Morning, everybody. It's not Archie Luxury live here on the Archie Luxury live stream channel. Saturday morning, thought I'd hop on, do a little bit of watch talk this morning. I wasn't really seeing anything going on YouTube, and caught up on a lot of the streams yesterday. So yeah, just thought I'd see what's going on and see if there's anybody's gonna kind of hop into the chat and do a bit of watch talk this morning. Do a bit of a review of the week. A lot of releases this week. AP's releases. And a bit of news. I might go through the JLC news of them selling a bit of restored watches, either through their boutiques or through their websites. So yeah, just gonna go with the flow. See who's around. It's morning here in North America, afternoon in Europe, and if you're in Australia, I'm sure you're up late. So I'll wait for a couple of folks to hop on the chat before I run the intro, but yeah, it's been a pretty eventful week of watches, mainly AP. I would say has been a lot of the releases we've seen have been from the Audemars Piguet brand with new Royal Oaks, which is not surprising. Obviously, if you're an AP fan, you're going to see a lot of new Royal Oaks. The Code 1159 release, and just a couple of other releases no one really covered, like the concepts and stuff, but that doesn't really entice me, so I don't think I'm going to go through that. There is a rumor also on a good friend of the channel, Bud the Stud, had he had mentioned that there was some news potentially of Patek Philippe and its connection either to Tiffany, connection to Tiffany and connection to other ADs that Bud the Stud's hearing for Patek Philippe in the States. So I'm going to kind of dive into those rumors as well, see if there's anybody who has any information. So, hey, Boozer. Boozer says, hey, you're Rebel streaming, Lex. Haha. The Rebel streaming is in full force, Boozer. Good to see you, man. Yeah, no, I'm just going to go through Watch Talk today, just a couple of topics. Figured out how to, an hour or two in the morning and see what I could do here on the show. But yeah, no, it's been an eventful week. A lot of Watch Talk, a lot of live streaming. JJ's done a channel takeover on his channel where Ali did a show and I did a show, and I think JJ's going to do some shows this weekend. So it's going to be an action-packed live stream. If you like Watch Talk and you consume your Watch Talk content through live streaming, there's going to be a lot of live streaming in the Archieverse. Obviously, a lot of channels do the post shows, the drama, which everybody loves as well. So today I'll probably just stick to Watch Talk in the morning. People have their cup of coffee if they're just waking up. If they're still in bed, I'm going to kind of cover, like I said, a bit of the week news from the week, as well as a few other pieces, of Watch Talk. I don't expect a huge amount of interaction this morning because I think people are still waking up. But you know what? Maybe we've got 9 people watching, so I'll probably go and run the intro here. We can get started, and then I can kind of get into a few topics. So let's do the cheesy intro for everybody. All right, we're back. The cheesy intro. He still runs that cheesy intro. So we got watches 24. Good question here. Where would you rank Grand Seiko versus Swiss? Look, I actually think Grand Seiko is a good brand. I think that they produce watches kind of at all ends of the spectrum. The watches that most people are familiar with, like the Birch, the Snowflakes, those kind of watches that really compete against Rolex. I think that's where most buyers are looking at Grand Seiko. We do have, and I can even pull up here the Grand Seiko that Higgins has. And I'll show this tab here. I'm also like Archie. I don't really like the idea of these numbered names. SBGZ003. This is a very high-end, high horology Grand Seiko piece, right? If you look kind of, if I scroll all the way down here, hopefully, yeah, I'm sharing my screen. If we kind of go all the way down here, and in this article, they kind of compare it to Creedor, which is historically Grand Seiko's, high horology brand. So, the question is that how do I compare Grand Seiko to Swiss watches? Well, they are, definitely competitors of Swiss watches. Philippe Dufour himself said the best finishing in watchmaking today is not in Switzerland. So maybe alluding to Germany as well as Japan. At the high end of the spectrum, obviously, a lot of people are familiar with Creedor, which is Seiko's, really, I'd say, high horology brand. And this is the Aichi 2, which is an older watch, an older movement compared to Higgins's watch. And still very, very well done. Very, very well decorated piece. When you get into the piece that I was talking about, the one that Higgins has, you can see here in a lot of the movement finishing. They have anglage and an internal angle, which is a staple of high horology finishing. So Grand Seiko can definitely do high horology finishing. I think at the low end of the spectrum, where most people are interested in Grand Seiko versus Swiss watches. Look, I think a few years back they were good bang per buck. I know the prices are going up for these pieces, and to me, that's really the difficult part about Grand Seiko is Grand Seiko when you start making the prices go up in comparison to a Rolex and get close to Rolex prices, and I'm talking about retail prices, I'm not talking about secondary prices, that's when people kind of start eroding the real value of Grand Seiko. It's look, we're supposed to get some bang per buck in the watch versus a Rolex. Now, yes, the dials are finished better, the movements are slightly finished better. Zaratsu Sirocco polishing is there, but to me, that the Grand Seiko beauty of it was that you get all that at a very, very cheap price. Not to say that they're still not affordable, and I still think there is room to grow in the price, but I think as they get more and more expensive, they run the risk of really eroding that value. So that's how I'd rank them. I think that they are comparable to Swiss watches. They do have high horology finishing at the top end, and at the low end, and I'm talking about low end, not really their quartz pieces, but more like, let's talk about their automatics, like the Birch, that they will be comparable like that. LV, what's up, 10? Is it redundant having both the Aquanaut and a sub? Same functions, they are not redundant, and I'll tell you why. Your sub is your functional daily driver, very robust. You can bang it around. I mean, I've had a 1680 sub that was 50 plus years old that I could still use, right? I just had to check the seals and the water resistance of the watch every year with my watchmaker, but the sub is going to outlast you as a functional wearer. Your 5167, look, you have a 324 movement. I don't know if they've updated it, but they used to have the 324 movement, which is the same movement in the Nautilus and the Calatrava. It is high horology. It's, I'm not going to say it's obviously not as robust as the Rolex movements. It's more of an occasional wear. I'd be wearing that, going out for lunch in Miami, not dipping in the pool, but nice warm day. You got a rubber strap, but just something to enjoy, right? You like the sports look, but it's not really a sports watch, quote unquote. Same as the Royal Oak, right? Like a sports looking watch. It is supposed to be a quote unquote sports watch. Would I play sports with it? Probably not. So yeah, same function, but that the usability of the two pieces is where I differentiate it. And that's where I would say, your Aquanaut will have its purpose as more of an occasional piece that you want to have that look, that dress down, that sporty look, versus a Submariner, which you could wear every day and not have to worry about it. Omega says, good afternoon from Greece. Good afternoon. Matt Lindell asks, Tan, would you think of adding a Cartier Santos? Here, hold on. Let me just switch the tab back to Patek here. Tan, what do you think of adding a Cartier Santos to my Explorer 1 for a two and done watch collection? Look, I love the Cartier Santos. I'd recommend, Matt, if you do have a normal size wrist, 7 inches, 6 3/4 inches or above, you probably want to stick to the large model. I've heard, that the mediums and the smalls they probably aren't super, super functional for most wrist sizes. So I'd stick to the large model of the Cartier Santos. I personally love the white dial. I know it's, some people love the blue dial version of it, but For me, classic white dial, Cartier Santos steel, one of my favorite watches. I've never actually owned a Cartier, and it's something that I'm looking to expand into in the next, probably next year. I would say it's not that hard to pick them up. I definitely want to get them on the secondary market, not lose any money off retail. But yeah, man, like I think you'd have a great two and done. Your Explorer one for your daily use, and your Cartier when you get dressed up, right? Like, what could you ask more for, right? Is that Omega says, hi, Tent, interesting topic. Lots of topics. I want to, Omega, I like to interact with the chat, give people value as well. I know sometimes on Archie's main show, it's rapid fire super chats, and we don't spend a lot of time. So, I wanted to slow it down a bit and chat. So, hey, Dodger, hello, Tent, and folks, looking forward to the show. I've dropped the link for anybody who wants to join. I've sent it in WhatsApp to some folks. Loose 2 says jiu-jitsu polishing, Sirocco polishing with Grand Seiko. Look, I don't have any, I don't have any ill will towards the brand or my thoughts towards the brand in a negative way. I think, they're going to take some time, and we knew that with that brand, with the Seiko name on it, and to continue with the Seiko name on it, it would take some time to show value, and they have, absolutely. It's just they do run the risk of increasing their watch prices and eroding that value, I think, for customers. I'm going to get into a rumor that hasn't been talked about on a lot of streams, and this came from Bud the Stud. He sent this to me, and it's a rumor. Bud the Stud was saying, "Hey, Tan, have you heard anything about Patek pulling out from the U.S. market?" Which just seems completely out of left field. Patek, I mean, the U.S. market is the largest market for Swiss watches as exports, and this is coming from a very famous Instagrammer, Patekaholic. Check him out on Instagram. He has obviously a vast collection of Pateks. He's very well in the know with Pateks. I don't think he's stating anything, but this is what he's hearing. So I'll read this Instagram post for those that maybe a little small on the screen, where the post says, "So I went today to Beverly Hills Tiffany & Co. store today to check if they still have Patek. They confirmed that salon is closed. Same with San Francisco. Only remaining point of sale for Patek Philippe Tiffany is New York City, but I think it will be gone as well." Now, I don't think this is, I don't know if this news is directly from Patekaholic or if this is a rumor, but somebody went to the stores of Tiffany & Co. For the Patek Salon in LA as well as in San Francisco, and they allegedly don't sell Patek anymore. I don't know how true that is, but if it is, it's it's a pretty substantial piece of news that I don't think most watch channels have covered. Obviously, you guys know I love Patek Philippe, so I will definitely cover this piece of news. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, Patek Philippe and Tiffany have had a relationship over 100 years, and the founders of Patek Philippe, like I think one of the first deals they struck in the U.S. was with Tiffany & Co. So, it's interesting to think that they would pull out of a relationship. I don't know if that's actually going to happen. I don't know if they would pull out of such a historic relationship. They just, last year did the Tiffany dial Nautilus in obviously collaboration with Tiffany, and it was a huge success, huge marketing success for the brand. So I don't know if Patek would actually pull from Tiffany. So when Bud the Stud sent me this piece of info asking, "Hey, have you heard if Patek Philippe was pulling out of the United States?" My first reaction was highly unlikely. I mean, I don't see a real business reason for them to pull out of the largest market in the world for wristwatches. Number one, would they be pulling out of certain ADs? Yeah, I think absolutely. I think a lot of brands, Rolex has been doing this for years. I think Patek's also been doing this in recent times. Has been consolidating their ADs so that they can really maximize the reach to the market while not obviously really, I think, saturating the market by having too many ADs around maybe in the same area to cover the population that is to be covered. So that is a very strategic and difficult thing to do. But yeah, look, is Patek pulling out of the U.S.? I don't think so. Is Patek consolidating ADs? Probably. We all know Rolex is doing that. I'm sure many of you have a Rolex AD that no longer has its dealership. I have, years ago, there was two ADs in my city, and the one I used to go to, where I had a very strong relationship with, a good family connection with as well, lost its license. So that is just that's just common, that happens in wristwatch business. But do I think Patek's pulling out? Probably not. Do I think Patek is ending the relationship with Tiffany? Probably not. Like it doesn't really make any sense. Like, this is their probably longest standing partner in the United States. Huge, it's a huge brand. Um, I think in some of the comments people were talking about, well, Patek want to do its own boutique style business like AP is doing, and or connect with another larger vendor. But I mean, Tiffany's a pretty big one, right? So I would be very shocked if they completely pulled out of the U.S. Now, did they consolidate into one store? Maybe saying all of Philippe is going to New York City. Maybe that's possible. But Patek actually pulling from Tiffany altogether, I don't know. What do you guys think? Maybe post some comments in the chat. I can pull them up. I just think any brand that's going to pull from Tiffany and Co. is just not. It doesn't make any sense. Saad, good afternoon, good evening. How are you doing?
Hello, Ten the man. How are you, bro?
I'm good. I'm good. How's things? Are you not in the States right now? Are you?
No, no, I'm very far away here.
Okay, very far away. Good. Yeah. No, I was just covering some watch talk this morning. I wanted to cover a rumor that hasn't been covered in any of the watch YouTube channels, and this was sent to me by Bud the Stud, where a post from Patekaholic, who's a very famous Instagrammer, big Patek collector, posted some news that, and I don't know if this is directly from him or if it's from somebody else, where it says the individual went to the stores in Beverly Hills and San Francisco for Tiffany, the Patek salon in Tiffany, and they're closed. And the only place now you can source Pateks from Tiffany are in New York City. And so the rumor was that is Patek either A, pulling out of the United States, which I think is a little far fetched, or is Patek pulling from Tiffany and Co., or is Patek just limiting all of Tiffany and Co. to New York City? I mean, what do you think? Do you think it's stupid for Patek to just pull out of Tiffany, or the U.S.? I think it's a little far fetched.
From US, it's next to impossible because it's the most important market in the world for everything, even for cars or whatever. It's not just watches. So they design watches for the American market actually. So that is very misleading. I would say you never know, but where will they sell those watches then? China is already in lockdown. What Russia has a war. What other market they will be targeting? So, but the other thing is Tiffany. That I am not sure of. That could be their internal maybe strategy or just a hype to create these double stamped watches even more expensive.
Yeah, look, like, for the history of Patek Philippe, it was Antoine Patek. His name, he had a different name. In when he actually changed his name, to Antoine de Patek. He had a Polish name prior to that, but let's just, for the sake of simplicity, Antoine Patek had himself come to the United States um, in the late 19th century. Yeah, it would be the 19th century. Not it wasn't the 20th century. It was the late 19th century to the United States, and he would come. So the job between Patek and Philippe, the two founders of Patek Philippe, was Patek was the salesperson. He did the selling of the watches and the marketing and everything, and Philippe was the watchmaker. Okay, so Patek came to the United States. He'd go to these grand fairs and stuff like that, and showcase the craftsmanship of Patek Philippe. Um, and he would, one of his first deals was with Tiffany. So it's a long standing relationship between Patek Philippe and Tiffany. So you know do I think that they would consolidate stores? Maybe not have three stores, but maybe one store. Sure, because that's what the post is saying. do I think they would completely end the relationship for that long? I don't know, man. Because Saad, they just had that release of the Tiffany Nautilus that was just huge success, right?
Yeah, that
Like
was marketing. That did very well marketing for Patek Philippe and both of the brands actually. People who didn't knew about these things, Patek Philippe, especially the 5711, and some people who didn't know about. It came into world record kind of thing. Whenever something happens like that, even a person who lives in cave, he will then come to know. Okay, there is a brand that sells steel watches and went for auction for this much amount. So
mhm.
this is a outstanding marketing for both of them.
Yeah, I agree. It just it doesn't make any sense, and like you said, pulling completely out of the U.S. market, which is the largest export market for Swiss watches, it doesn't make any sense. What other markets are they? Are they just going to sit in Asia and sell watches there? It doesn't make any sense. So I think for Bud the Stud, and I think and really where this rumor came from, Saad, is I think Bud had seen Patek 80s being shut down, which isn't uncommon. It's not
Yeah.
uncommon the Rolex 80s shut down, and then he saw this news and we tried to tie. I think he was trying to tie it together, and he asked me what I thought, and I do think that Patek is consolidating ADs. I think they may even be consolidating stores within Tiffany. I don't think that they're pulling from the Tiffany relationship just because of the history. I could be wrong, but I don't like. I would say there's a 99.9% chance that they're going to stay in the United States market. Like there's not. I don't know a business reason to leave, right?
Yeah,
Um,
100%.
let's pivot to Rolex since we have Saad on the call, and I know Saad loves his Rolex. Um, the question here is Tan. Well, say it's Tan and Saad. What are your top three favorite Daytoners in the current era?
Daytoners, one of
Daytoners.
the top one is 116506, which is the platinum Daytona, everybody's
Daytona, yeah.
favorite. Yeah, this one.
This one.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I love this price on request. I love that.
Yeah, we
Maybe,
love these kind of things. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so the platinum Daytona. Okay, what else?
The second should be 116508, which is the all gold version, yellow gold version with green dial.
Yeah, so I don't. Yeah, they should have it. Page one. Let's go to page two. There we go. This is the John Mayer. Yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful. Now at least they show this price: 45,700 Canadian dollars. John Mayer. Yeah.
Yeah. And the third is, I would say, 116505, which is the rose gold version, uh, with the reverse. No, it's not called reverse Paul Newman, but you can say black dial works for me in this.
So is it this one here?
Yeah.
Yeah, those are really good choices. Um, I think for me, look, it's hard to look. Maybe I'll go off the beaten path because, look, platinum Daytona. I think everyone's gonna try to say either the steel ceramic, which you didn't say in your choices was the steel ceramic. You didn't care for the steel ceramic.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say the steel ceramic. I actually, interestingly enough, I actually like the black dial steel ceramic versus the panda. Everyone loves the panda, and the panda from a investment and all of that, keeping the prices, value retention. The panda is obviously the one to get, but for me, if I was going to go steel, I'd probably go with the steel. I'd go with the steel Daytona in black. So that's the 116500 in black, which is right here. I like it in black. To be honest with you, I don't know why. I just do like it in black, so I'll go with that as the first one. Um, I'm gonna avoid maybe kind of what you're saying. So um, I do like the platinum and the John Mayer. So let me kind of pick something else here for
What
you as
What do you
well.
think about the first watch? We cannot see this in this page. It was the 116508, but with the Paul Newman dial, black dial with, or you can say it's John Player dial. That's
Yeah,
also a good choice.
yeah. This is a really cool watch. And I would agree. This one right here you're talking about, right? With the black dial.
Yeah, there no the if you see there is one on the left uh, with the subdials are in gold.
Yeah,
This one.
yeah, this could be a good choice as well. Um, yeah, so if I'm gonna go the 116500 black dial, let's choose this one, and then let me go back here and choose a rose gold. Let's check this one out. A rose gold meteorite dial. Um, I think that the meteorite dials are quite special. So, and I do, for picking a yellow gold, I'll pick a rose. So I got a steel, I got a yellow, and I got a rose. Not a huge fan of two tone. Nothing against the two tone watches. I just don't like two tone in anything except for maybe a classic Royal Oak or maybe a Nautilus. Um, so yeah, those would be the ones I'd pick. And I'm trying to avoid obviously the simple answer, which would be Platona, John Mayer, and Panda, which I think most people would give. So I think Saad and I wanted to do something a little different. That what else would we pick for it? Swinging Kangaroo, who does himself have a two-tone Daytona in the chat. And good morning, good morning. We got the Rancher here, Neil before Saad. Rancher, if you want to join us,
Special
we're talking
salute to the Ranger.
the Rancher, the OG of all OGs in the live
I
stream
really love him,
community.
man. He's very interesting guy.
Yeah,
He's
look, when I first started watching live streams on this channel, Sucker Horn was on with Archie. This was the pre Super Chat
I
days,
don't
and
like Sakahon.
yeah, look, the topics that Sucker Horn and Archie would talk about were different, right? It wasn't about watches; it was more about Thailand. So it was interesting to me because it was just something else. I liked Archie's personality, so the topic was different. So I like that. But when it came to watches, the Live with Clive shows, like those shows were, they had a good dynamic, right? Clyde had, and his collecting style was different back then. He was a lot more into Rolex. He had some Pams. He had a reversal, I remember, at the time, and Archie was, just starting in the live stream format. So, they always had a good dynamic. It over the years, I think it changed because both of them kind of evolved too, right? Like Clyde's collecting evolved to what it is today, and I think a lot of people are familiar with it. But that's not to say that the dynamic can't work. Personality wise, they work really well together. So we are hoping that Clive will do a live stream show with Archie in the near future, where it's just Clive and Archie, nobody else, because I think a lot of people miss that. Rob Filmer says, "Go for the gold." Yeah, look, I think gold is where it's at in the Daytona. I don't know, Saad,
We have
are you a big
we,
fan of the two tones at all, or no?
I don't like two-tone people, but watches are okay. Then we forgot a very important model, bro. The 116595.
116595 here. Let me pull it up. 116595. Ooh, let's have a look. Yeah, of course. You didn't need to give me the ref. I know why you gave me the reference because you didn't want to say what it was.
Yeah.
I'm like, what's references? This is the Rainbow Daytona. So is this still a catalog available piece? They don't have it on the website. Is this still catalog available?
I think I'm not sure, but it could be available. Some of the old models are still available, so uh, it could
Yeah.
be.
Now, Saad, let me
But
ask you.
he said that what's our three top favorite Daytonas? We forgot very, very special models. We thought, we just went to the current production line. So
Bhaijan, I'm telling you, he just said current catalog in his message.
okay, okay, got it.
That's why. But look, that was the question, right? Is it currently now, Saad? Let me ask you because I don't know if a lot of people have asked you this question, but you buy watches in a country because Hisham used to be on the channel. He's in India,
Yeah.
and he buys solely from the AD because he says in India there just isn't a secondary market that's trusting over there. He's very scared. He doesn't think that a lot of people have a lot of distrust in the Indian market to do kind of secondhand trading. You're purchasing in Pakistan when you buy watches. Now, do you purchase in country? Do you go to England or the Middle East to purchase your Rolexes? You don't have to go into details, but like, what has really been your buying strategy in Pakistan?
Look, then most of my watches were bought from UK, ADs from UK,
ADs from
and
UK.
few were from Dubai AD, Siddiqui and Sons. And Some of them were also bought from the gray market, but 100% agreed with Hisham. The problem here is, if you purchase from proper gray market dealer who has a brick and mortar nice showroom, what happens is if the watch has some issue after 2, 5, 10 years, you can return the watch to them. Here the problem is you will find difficulty in retailing. There will be a chance the shop will be no more there, and the issue is not about authenticity. You can at in 1 minute authenticate a watch by looking at it, the movement and stuff. The problem is the history of the watch.
Hmm.
Was the watch stolen? Was there any fraud involved in it? Insurance theft? you know so that is the main issue. I try my best not to buy watches from here because there is no proper mechanism. I mean, we don't have access to Rolex registry. So
Hmm.
that is why I try my best to get from proper shop who can then commit to me even after
Hmm.
10 to 15 years. I've also bought some watches from there is a UK brand, a company called Bernard Watches in the
Oh yeah,
United States.
I'm familiar with them. Yeah.
Yeah, I bought few dates from them also. So
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, that answered my question. Hey, Christopher Negroni, good to see you. And Dry Down says Cliver's most infamous FU blanket submitted for collection review, best roll ever. Dry Down, actually, I was on the live stream. I was streaming with Archie when he put that up, and it was funny because I didn't get it, live, and then Clyde texted me saying, "Oh, here we go. We have the famous blanket here, and I'll put it full screen." Where you can see kind of a bit of the outline of the FU on the blanket. But when when I was live doing the show with Archie, and it's funny because Clyde is texting me. He's like, "Yeah, you know what that blanket reads, right?" And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Morning, Clyde. How you doing?
Good. I was epileptic the entire time. I was laughing so hard I literally could not breathe.
Yeah, like
good day,
what?
adventure.
And he's like, "Oh, wait a minute! It looks like. Let me turn around. It looks like it's upside down." And they flipped it over, and I thought, God, it is. Yeah, I didn't know if he could read it or not, or if he was playing into it. He played it extremely well.
No, I don't think he knew. But once you saw it, you just couldn't unsee it. I think, like in the chat, a few people picked up on it, and once it actually got out, what the blanket said. So the joke was, Saad, he had laid all his watches out in a FU pattern, but on a Native American style blanket, which made it a little bit difficult to decipher. Right, it wasn't as apparent as if he used just
It
a
broke up
white
the
piece of
pattern.
paper. Yeah, yeah. So it was probably, yeah, one of the most epic trolls. Because Archie is just because I remember this stream, we were asking Archie to review this collection and what he thought of it, and so he's looking at the watches individually while it's just saying this big fu to him on the screen, which was
Well,
excellent.
and also, if you can't afford an F off collection, you should at least try for an FU collection.
So it's good that we have the rancher on the call because, Saad, I wanted to just ask another question about watch trading or buying watches in Pakistan, and ranchers. He's known as the Wrangler. He used to do the Wrangler of the week and that was who got the best deal on a watch of the week at the time. And so the Pakistani culture and the Indians in the culture in the subcontinent is to negotiate on a lot of things, almost everything, right? You go to a market in Pakistan and you're looking to buy a good, often you'll try to negotiate the price. It's part of the culture. So when it comes to wristwatches, Saad, and look, I know that Rolex, it's stupid to even try, but I'm sure people do. Can you kind of talk about that, like in buying watches within your country or in the subcontinent? Like, is that negotiation culture prevalent in that, or is it just, hey, no, you walk into Islamabad or Karachi or wherever the AD is, and you just buy whatever you buy, and that's it.
From 80, there is no negotiation like in other countries. Zero. In fact, there is no availability. I called them 2 days back, and they said no watch since month or two. So that was from my AD. Other so no point of negotiation when there is nothing, and of course there is no negotiation from the ADs. But gray market, of course, you have to pull their heart out. in order to get a good deal from them. So that is there. Yeah.
Because they expect it, right? They expect people to negotiate, right? Which is, and for you, Clyde, obviously negotiating where you are in the United States is part of the game as well. And Clyde, for Saad, if you don't know his history, Clyde will look in a lot of different areas to find a watch, and if it comes up in Craigslist or it comes up in a pawn shop or it comes up locally, right, through word of mouth or whatever, Clyde will go
Because
and
nothing
Right.
says luxury rance transaction like two heavily armed men in an alley behind a Starbucks.
Yeah, and that was going to be kind of the question to you, Clyde. Was I asked that side his question about the negotiation in his part of the world. You know, maybe over your period of collecting, what would have been kind of your, the negotiations that really stood out for you that were obviously outside of the norm. That maybe give us a story of one of the best ones.
The funny is, we were talking about this, and I like the 42 millimeter Explorer 2 with a black dial.
Yeah.
Haggled, and of course I'm getting like all sorts of negotiation advice from the Cardinal you guys in the Cardinal chat,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like box of papers like new, like a year or two old Explorer 2 black dial, and they're saying get them down to this. I think it's 7,000. Get them down to 65. Get them down to 65.
Yeah.
So I went over and they came back. And they basically were like, did you get him down to 65? No, he was South Asian. And then everyone's like, oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Technically, that's a win.
Yeah, it's look, but you've come across, like I remember when you bought your 321 Speedmaster, and that came up for a very good price. And I remember talking to you saying, hey man, just do it. Whatever they want, just do it. Like it's, but you still negotiated pretty hard on that deal. You didn't just take whatever they told you, right?
Well, no, actually, I had people negotiating on my behalf, so that's the nice way to do it. But also, one of the things which you used to see, especially with Rolex, was if you let $100 come between you and the Rolex that you really wanted, you fucked up.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense, right? Like it's difficult, right? Because you're dealing with, if you're dealing on Craigslist, you're probably competing against a lot of other buyers. And have you ever had a situation where you went to Dallas, for example, and you show up and it's just the deal's kind of gone sideways, or has it always been you drive down and the deal's good and you never really had an issue?
Not real well, actually, not one time, and who helped me with this, believe it or not, is Marco.
Okay.
From Timepiece Gentleman.
Yeah. It was it his client, or was it just somebody he knew?
No, actually, we were meeting and talking about it. It's like, oh, I'm down in the city, so it's like we met at, of course, In-N-Out Burger, because if you're in Okie, if you go to Texas, you have to go to In-N-Out Burger because they don't have them up here.
Yeah, In-N-Out is solid. West Coast burgers.
But we're talking, he basically then noticed, he said, wait a minute, this doesn't match up. This dial, and he basically explained, I said, son of a bitch, you're right. So I went back to, called the guy back and raced hell and actually got my money back for the watch.
Yeah,
what happened is probably a reseller had probably switched out the dial, but the age of it wasn't just simply switching it from a polar to a black rope. It was the wrong age dial as well, which to me really brought down the value of my enjoyment of the watch.
Thank you, 1105. I appreciate the nice comment. Yeah, we're just trying to help everybody out. If you don't know as well, I'm also helping out JJ. I'm doing watch streams on his channel as well, just trying to bring some different content. I try to do different content than you see on other YouTube channels. Like, we're kind of talking about the negotiation and of watches, and even the minefields that exist out there when you start really going for deals, right? And I was going to bring up this next article. You have a question here, Clive, from the Dry Down. Clive, whatever happened to your source? If I recall, supplied you with a rare bird amongst other watches.
Negatory. Actually, you're thinking Uber-Oki. In Uber-Oki, it's like it's like really close with him and his watch repair guy.
And
Glenn.
Uber Oki was different than Cheap Charlie, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. God no, night and day difference. Even yeah. As a matter of fact, I told him about the name I gave Cheap Charlie. He started using it.
That's excellent.
But well, yeah. The funny thing is, I heard not too recently one of the stories said, "Oh, can I help you?" I said no. I heard rumors that you were dead, and I just wanted to, so here you are. So I guess they're not right. I guess.
And running with the topic of the minefield, right? So Saad said the same thing. He said, like I usually buy my pieces outside of the country because it's the minefield when it comes to the originality of pieces. And kind of you said, hey, the dial's wrong. So there is a recent article about JLC. Hideki posted this earlier this week, where JLC raids its archives for new vintage watch collections. Essentially, the whole story here is JLC is selling watches, vintage watches that they have authenticated, they have serviced, they have made parts to make the watch in a state that is sellable. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And it kind of talks about the history of JLC and the certain type of watches. So they have, and I'll show you guys the website here. This is a reversal that of all the ones, this was the one that interested me. This is a reversal from the 30s with the Jaeger stamp on it, and it says Fabrique Suisse, which means Swiss made. But it's a 30s reverso that they have actually gone and created, so or restored. So I'm going to go to the website on JLC's website. It's called the Treasures of Another Time overview, the collectibles timepieces. So if you click the collectibles on their website, you can find this, and you can actually purchase these watches restored from JLC, directly from JLC. And the actual the interesting part is they may even put these in their boutique. So this may, and look, I think that if Rolex wasn't a really greedy company, and they provided a proper service at proper prices to customers, this could really avoid the really the issues that both of you guys described in both ends of the world, right? Whether you're in Asia or you're in the United States or you're anywhere, in that if you're looking for vintage watches,
or whether you're in East Asia or South Asia,
anywhere, right? Like South Asia, East Asia, any part of it, right? Like it's vintage watches is just a minefield. And look, for me, I'm very interested in learning. So, for me, I don't mind educating myself on a specific watch that I want to hunt down. Like, when I bought my 1680 red Submariner Mark IV dial, I did my research. I knew what the bezel insert would look like. So it'd have to be the fat font insert. I knew how to look at the dial and know if it's real. I knew how to, I knew to loop on the red text to understand whether it was fake or not. So, very, very important to spend the effort to do that. But not everybody wants to do that. Some people.
There's more to it than that. You're treating like anything that doesn't have anything, the absolute original parts that came with is a Franklin watch. No, because you have some watches that are basically safe wings or worn. Their owners didn't like them, or they're too nice to wear, or whatever. Stuck in a safety deposit box, stuck in a safe soft drawer, never worn. And you have other ones that were worn very exclusively. Daily.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like, so
a lot of times, but a lot of times, though, there's a difference in that, because these were tool, especially we're talking about Rolex, they were tool watches. They were instruments. And so when you look at them from that standpoint, not too long ago, you would, you'd see a Rolex owner go into a Rolex AD, and they say, "Hey, Bob, we got your Submariner back." And I tell you what, they did a great job with it. They completely redid everything. They made the dial look like new. They took that case was getting that dial was getting cruddy. Those hands were getting cruddy. They lost their lume. So they took up the dial. They took in their hands. They put in brand new stuff. And I swear to God, Bob, it looks brand new. It looks like a brand new Submariner now. And as you know, these new Submariners are selling. God, they're selling for like $900 now. And Bob used to say, "Cool." Oh, and by the way, we also took that crappy old acrylic crystal and put in a we put in one that the glass on it, the crystal will never break. And Bob used to say, "Oh, this is awesome. Thanks, man." Oh, and Rolex also kept all the original parts. Oh, why would I want them for? Now, if that happened, today, you would hear you'd hear the owner of the watch in slow motion say, "No."
Well, it's an interesting topic because it's very, it's very insular to Rolex collecting, that it's that extreme. And I'll give you some kind of comparison. So in Seiko collecting, Seiko vintage collecting,
yes,
when you want to buy a restored Seiko, let's talk about the 62 Mas, the first Seiko diver, right? Like in Seiko, collectors use the term wabi when it comes to loom that's all fucked up and green and greenish gray and all flaking off and stuff. Not really nice. They don't mind reloomed hands. They prefer it to be restored in a classy way, not obviously fucked up, but like in a way that could be true to the originality somewhat. But it's like the same in cars, right? Like, yes, of course, a completely original Mercedes 300 SL Gullwing will go for crazier money than one that's restored, but a properly restored automobile is not worthless. And people would prefer a properly restored classic automobile than one that's in original condition that's all fucked up, because as Clyde alluded to, people use these pieces, whether it's watches or cars. But in the Rolex case, it's so extreme that everybody wants original, and there's kind of that void, Clyde, of truly restored.
I have a better example for you. Okay,
sure.
We've gone back and forth about this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, everyone should be familiar about the Seiko Pogue. Of course, it was one of the first automatic chronograph movements.
Yeah, I'll pull up a Pogue while you talk about it. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, though, so Colonel David Pogue got screwed out of they cut Apollo short because everyone got tired of it. They promised, "Hey, Colonel, we'll put you on Skylab." So instead of getting a couple of weeks time, you'll get months. You'll have months in space. You'll have more time and space than any other human being except for the Riskies. And it's like, okay, great. So I get my Speedmaster to train with, right? Well, no, it's not. We don't quite have the budget for it yet, but we'll get it to you we swear to God, before we put you on the rocket. So,
and is it me or the case is not finalized by Seiko here? It needs some shaving.
Yeah, this case is actually, they use this. So this Pogue I think is like probably 72-ish time frame, but they use this since like the late 60s. It's a 60s design case, but it's you know what, Saad, this is actually the speed timer, the original speed timer, because this is an automatic chronograph. Is probably one of the most iconic watches out there, because it was the first released automatic chronograph. Everyone talks about the El Primero being the first, but this was the first serially released to consumers watch that came out with an automatic chronograph. So it definitely is an icon. This watch.
They wasted a lot of steel here.
But the thing is, Seiko guys will look at that. It's like, okay, it's the same. The first generation, it has a yellow dial, it has a blue and red, it has a Pepsi bezel. Pogue. Okay, Pogue is a Pogue, is a Pogue, is a Pogue, is a Pogue. Who cares? But the funny part is, and then people start coming in, well, actually, no, Pogue, the one that Pogue had this inscription at 9 o'clock, and instead the one you have is at 12 o'clock. In other words, Rolex guys are coming in and applying Rolex standards to Seiko.
It's funny because I'm applying a Rolex standard here, because as you can see, I wrote, in my Google search, I wrote Seiko True Pogue, because the True Pogue is like this dial configuration with the water 70-meter resist, and then you obviously see whether it's a 6002 versus.
But that is so endemic to Rolex, because
it is
because they have it, because it's slight. I call it slightly special Rolexes, because it's like, well, no. I realize they made this reference, this 36mm Explorer, which actually was the surprise talk-off watch of 2018, but that's another story. But they made that one reference forever. But well, this is a blackout because the dial, the indices are different on this one, or the Explorer 2. It's like, oh, these are railroad, or the GMT2. So instead of Roman numerals, there's slashes. Oh, this is a slasher, so it's a little bit more special. Or what's more special is that the Swiss made, Swiss whatever, Sigma. And honestly, who fucking cares? I mean, really, truly, when you get to it, it's one of those things that they're good. They're good watches. They're all good watches, but Rolex churned them out for years. And they're slightly very different iterations of them, just tiniest differences. But Rolex guys, they have to pretend that theirs is the best one ever. And
sorry, not to go too deep into Seiko here, Clyde, because we are on the ArchieLuxury channel, and we'll have some revolts against us. But the point you're making is, Rolex, vintage Rolex collectors can be very OCD, and most others aren't, right? But you're right with the Pogue. I'll let you finish. I just wanted to make sure, because
that's just the point I have. And Rolex they do that with their own watches too. But that's almost there's also. But they also try to claim if it's something like, if they really know the difference and they're really excited about the minor differences, I understand that. But then try to act like one is significantly better than the other. That's the part that I just take such umbrage with. It's like that is the mentality that's just killing the joy out of watch collecting.
No worries. We got a question here from Scratch, and we got a couple of questions, so we'll try to go through them a little quickly. Hey Tan, do you think Rolex will do something special for the sub this year for the 70th anniversary? Of course, right? It's an anniversary. They're obviously going to take that opportunity. Is it going to be something crazy? That's what I wanted to kind of debate here. So I kind of pulled up the history of the Submariner. We've got this is the first oyster cushion case from Rolex 1926. And then we go through the first quote unquote Submariner. It wasn't even a Submariner at the time, but the start point of the Submariner, which is a 6202 Turnograph. As you can see here, it was not labeled as a Submariner, but it's not the Turnograph that you would think of today. And then we kind of go into the first dials of the Submariner here. So for those that don't know, Submariners actually, some of them had, they will have certain different dials here. So as you can see here, you can see a Turnograph, you can see an Explorer, and you can see kind of the first Submariner here without the Mercedes hands. And with a lollipop seconds hand on it. And, as you go through kind of 6204 and other references, I kind of just wanted to show a couple of different Submariners to think if Rolex was ever to go through vintage, which I don't think that they will, but, obviously Submariners didn't have crown guards at the time. Submariners were 37 millimeters at the time. They didn't have Mercedes hands at the time. Some of them didn't have a ton of water resistance.
But they had Mercedes Gleiss at the time.
They had Mercedes what?
Gleiss at the time.
Yes, that's true. You can see different dial variations where it says Submariner Perpetual. Submariners are very, very. There's just in this lineup. There's so much variation in what the Submariner look like. So if you're working at Rolex, let's say you're the designer who's asked to make this special anniversary, right? To me, this is where I'd be looking. Obviously, is looking through history and seeing what could happen with the Submariner. You can see here, this is an interesting one where we have a Submariner with numerals similar to the Explorer numerals 369 on the subby. So, not to kind of go through it in depth too hard, but I do believe that there's going to be a 70th anniversary Submariner. Look, to me, I think it's wasted. They understand the hype, and a lot. Well, we understand the hype. I think Professor's going to scold me if I say that Rolex listens to me or anybody or any collector. But I think that if I was working there, I think the opportunity of the Hulk dial is there. But I would be looking to maybe, and I don't know if they'll do this in a non-precious metal, but the Hulk dial to return either in precious metal. But if I were me, if you were asking me what I would want a Hulk no date, the Hulk bezel, the Hulk special, gold green dial in a no date would be my dream piece for the 70th anniversary. Guys on the panel, the question is, do you think they're going to release something special, and what do you think it'll be?
Well, okay, but let's also look at something when you consider it. Do you really, if it's really a dive watch, do you need a date on a dive watch? I mean, how big of a tank are you going down with?
Yeah, exactly, right. Like when they added the date in the 60s through the 1680 Submariner, which is commonly known as the Red Submariner. You know what's funny, Clyde? I think I told the story on JJ's stream. When I bought my 1680 Red Submariner a few years back, and I first held it in my hand, and first thing I do with a sub is I play with the bezel, right? And the bezel's going both ways. It's bi-directional. I was like, holy fuck, did I buy a broken watch? But even at the time, they weren't unidirectional bezels. That didn't come till later. These watches were bi-directional. They didn't just have a unidirectional bezel like you'd expect on a modern dive watch, right? Professor Saad, what do you guys think? Do you think Rolex is going to do something special? And if they are, what will it be for the Submariner?
Professor, please.
No, Tanzil and Saad, please.
So I think they could release a solid gold, green dial, green bezel version of it. That could be possibility, but don't think that they take these anniversaries too much to their heart. Sometimes there are anniversaries and they don't even make something for that. So now, Professor, please.
Thank you. Good morning or good evening, depending where you are. Yes, first of all, they don't have to listen to anyone. Usually, the smaller brands of less importance listen, but Rolex doesn't need to listen. And certainly, they're not going to listen to us. um, I agree they will not necessarily have to produce anything. And if they do produce something, it will be unobtainable by most living creatures. So it will be something interesting but unobtainable, and it will be in precious metal. And I don't think that they want to interrupt the lineup of the steel watches right now for the Submariner line. It's already quite competitive with the other lines, especially the GMT. And if they do create something that is obtainable, it will unnecessarily move into that. And so I think they will announce something, but they could also announce something very little, which is not so interesting for the collectors. So overall, I think that it will be something in precious metal that is unobtainable.
Unobtainium, guys. That is the MO of Rolex. We do have, so just kind of move on because the chat's moving here. This is from 1105, great supporter of the channel. Tanzil, I'm considering a Sky Dweller. Can't decide on Oyster or Jubilee. What do you think? Personally speaking, I think the classic Oyster is just fine for the Sky Dweller. Usually when I buy modern, when I think of the Sky Dweller, I think of a comparative like a Datejust, right? Like in terms of its design. Not to say that it's simple like a Datejust, but when I look at it from afar, to me it would look like a Datejust. And I would prefer it in a modern iteration on a Oyster. It's interesting because I prefer the vintage, a 36 mil on a Jubilee, because I think the Jubilee bracelet definitely adds some flair to the smaller size. So if it's my personal choice, 1105, I would go with the Oyster. Anybody on the panel would vote for a Jubilee for the Sky Dweller?
Yes, certainly. I will recommend that they go for the Jubilee because it is a heftier watch. It is both thick and wide, and it is unpleasant to wear with the Oyster bracelet, more so than it is with the Jubilee. And certainly, it is much more difficult to obtain the watch in a Jubilee, and that's why you see a lot of Oysters going around.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can get the Jubilee, if you cannot, and you're being told that you are a unique person that has a unique watch with this myth of the AD, go for the Oyster. But if you have the choice, I would say go for the Jubilee.
Clivers, if you're still around, there's a question for you at Rancher. Would you ever buy another 5165? What was your experience with a smaller variation?
I liked it. But what was it? Was he talking about my Aquanaut? I think.
Yeah, the Aquanaut is what he's talking about. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm pulling it up.
It wasn't a 5165, but the
I
thing
think
is,
it was
nice.
wasn't a 50, right? It was a 50 model. It was older than the 51 models.
Book him, Dano. Yes. But the thing is, it's a nice watch. I have to admit, there's a lot of good design in there. But if that watch didn't have anything other than Patek Philippe on the dial, I don't think anyone would pay it a second look.
Yeah, it was an interesting choice. Like, so Professor, for years I had tried to get Clyde to buy into Patek, for years. And Clyde was a Rolex guy. He loved Rolex, you know, and he dived into AP for a bit. You know, he had the overseas Navy themes, which is one of my favorite overseas watches. But with Patek, he was looking at the 5960, which was the annual calendar chronograph with a steel case and bracelet. And he ended up picking up a mid-size Aquanaut. And you know, I think this was the question, right? Is so Clyde? A lot of the viewers, you know, buy mid-size watches here. You'd be surprised at how many. Even Bud the Stud has a mid-size AP Royal Oak. He doesn't have the 41 millimeter. So I think they're interested in your take of a mid-size, you know, Aquanaut, of whether you think it's a good watch. Is it worth going back, or
I did like the watch, but it was because of the size. It was a sports watch I basically wore as a dress watch.
I see.
But also, what I liked about mine is that Patek Philippe, the most exclusive patina in the world. So the tritium on it had a really good job of yellowing up. But, you know, I almost think it's almost like a checkmark watch, though. You know, been there, bought the T-shirt, because, you know, if anything else, you know, it almost raised you to like emeritus status as a collector, because it's like, and which I always considered you to be, because it's like, well, shit, the guy did have a not an Aquanaut. He had a
Nautilus,
thank you, and a Royal Oak. So,
yep.
And sometimes it's just like, well, I've been there. I bought the T-shirt. Therefore, you don't really have a lot of reason to criticize me.
Yeah. So OC says, good morning, afternoon. Hey, OC. Some of these Pateks are underwhelming. We had a Patek unboxing last night. It makes a steel Aquanaut look very pedestrian. Look, I think with Patek, it's different strokes for different folks, right? Patek, if you look at their actual catalog, like they're I'm going to use quote unquote air quotes here, dress watch company. Aquanauts and Nautili are a minority in the collection in terms of the comparative of the catalog. And everybody kind of feels differently about certain pieces. I love the 5212 weekly calendar. A lot of people say it's too busy on the dial. Some people love the 6006 Calatrava. I think it's too busy. You know, people either say it's underwhelming, you know, because it's very simplistic. Other people want complications. Personally speaking, for example, OC, I had the choice of buying the 5711 and the 5712 because they were similar price at the time back in 2016, and I chose the 11 because I preferred the dial layout than the complications that was included with the 5712. So different strokes for different folks. On this, back to the topic of this JLC change here, like they're offering now vintage watches that, you know, that they have restored. And this is back to the story of restoration, right? Because like Clyde and I were saying, in the Rolex world, you either have completely serviced by Rolex and bastardized, you know, to, you know, what people think or they think is bastardized or you have a completely original watch and or maybe even a Frankenstein. So the way JLC is doing it is they're restoring pieces. They are remaking parts for pieces from the original blueprints. They're keeping as restored as possible and releasing it. Like, for example, I'm going to use this Reverso here as the example. So it's a 1930s Reverso, and I'll pull it up. And I know this price is going to scare a lot of people. I kind of looked at it when I clicked on it, and this one's actually sold, but they were selling it for $37,900 US. So this watch is quite special. It's a 1930s Reverso that JLC had restored, and it has the Jaeger logo on it. The dial is actually pretty interesting because JLC, we're coming from an era of like, you've got pocket watches that are in silver or white cream dials to, manufacturers that will produce, different colors, blue, red, and other colors on the dial. So this exact piece was actually a commission piece, or a piece that was requested by a client to be different. And Jaeger at the time produced a red dial for this customer. And so they had, JLC has restored this watch to what they feel is true to the actual original essence of the piece, restored by the brand itself. So for example, they didn't just flip a new dial and whatever. They must have obviously tried to keep it as close to the original piece as they could. Obviously very expensive, $37,000 for this piece, using the caliber 410 Le Coultre movement. This is obviously a new strap, it's not an original strap to it, but I'll blow this up here for you guys a bit to kind of see what the piece looks like. But this is kind of the idea of like the restoration, right? Like, I think that there's some middle ground in terms of restoration where the brands themselves could restore a piece true to the original design, right? Because when you had a 1680, the replacement was a white Submariner script. It wasn't restore it or use the red script, right? Which probably drove people fucking nuts in the modern day, right? So what do you guys take? What's your guys' take on restorations and whether brands should be doing this and selling these on their own?
Well, is there really that big of a difference between that or coming up with a homage to a past edition? Like, for instance, one of my favorites, the Breitling 806 1959 re-edition.
Professor, thoughts?
Big deal.
So, Professor says, bin the watch. Throw this in the garbage.
No. I want to say something about the Aquanaut.
Yeah, go ahead.
The Aquanaut was an entry-level watch before the hype. I mean, there's nothing to it. One good thing to it is that, as was said before, the dial is enlarged, and the luminescence is quite extreme and pleasant for people with older eyes like myself. Other than that, it's on a rubber strap, and after a few years, the rubber appears so cheap that it's not very typical of the name it carries. So I think people should do away with this hypeness about these entry-level watches, which again are unobtainable. That's why people want them.
It's a great design, but I just don't see why someone doesn't do a homage to it and just knock them out of the saddle.
Oh, Clyde, you talking about Bagel Sport? Bagel Sport?
Yeah. Oh, believe it or not, that Bagel Sport, it's surprising how good of a watch it was for just almost no money. And one of these days, the Chinese are going to get it. They're going to get their act together, and I think they're going to probably knock the Swiss down on their smug asses.
That's right. You're bringing up a good point, because I tried to say the same yesterday with our German friend and Mr. Chi. I think this is the intention of the Chinese to go, and this is a long-term plan. Over the next 20 years, the Swiss are going to be taken over by the Chinese once they move into the watch industry. And all of these watches, will become a funny park.
I'm going to showcase one of the Benjamin Chi watches. Big thanks to Benjamin Chi. He actually was listening in on the show yesterday, JJ show.
So it's claimed, Tanzil.
No.
In Singapore AM?
No. I got the text. He was actually.
He was, okay.
Yeah, he was watching, and Benjamin Cheese actually requested to do a show with us on JJ stream to obviously talk about his pieces and whatnot. So we're going to be trying to set that up with JJ and Benjamin Chi to kind of discuss his process, because obviously his cloisonné dials. This is the Starry Night. I think we also looked at the Peacock. As well, just beautiful dials. And look, we definitely like to talk about stuff that's off the beaten path. When it comes to the Aquanaut, Professor, when I purchased the Nautilus back in 16, the Aquanaut, and this is funny because it's a different era, right? Everyone was saying the Aquanaut's the poor man's Nautilus. You never hear that today. You never hear people saying Aquanaut's poor man's Nautilus. The Aquanaut is very sought after. It wasn't not sought after back then. It was okay. But it's not like, oh my god, I have to have.
No, Aquanaut, you could pick it up anytime from Patek. It was a shitty watch.
And now
let's be realistic. Today it's different, but back then it was a shitty watch. You could pick it up for whatever the retail. Nautilus was the same, right? And now suddenly Aquanaut is, you look at the chronograph. What's the reference number? The 5968, and this is a chronograph, and it's a 60-minute counter. I mean, and you're paying what, 55,000? So is this a ripoff or not? So if a Benjamin Chi comes in and sells you this watch for $70K, you wait and see what happens. It's like I was saying, the automobile industry. A lot of people 5 years ago, 3 years ago, were joking with the Chinese. Right now, the Chinese are the leaders in electric vehicles, and they're the biggest exporter of electric vehicles. So 20 years from now, 30 years, when all of us from here will be dead, they'll be conquering the watch market, and the Swiss will be sitting on their cheesy asses.
Yeah, and look, like, and again, this is different strokes for different folks, right? Like, some people like the Grenade, some people like the Blue Dial.
Well, there are differences of opinion. For instance, I think the Swiss have smug asses, and the Professor thinks they have cheesy asses. But I think there's room enough for us to both tolerate each other's views on the Swiss asses.
Let's not get their rancher. That's a sensitive topic.
I think the one comment, the OC that CB wrote, mostly alluding to watch collecting and whatnot. Like, CB is really, what I really appreciate about CB is CB will drop watches in the chat, whether he's super chatting or not, just talking about, hey, check out this Chronofeld, hey, check out this MBNF, like really talking about pieces that are spectacular, pieces that are interesting, that it really interests me to look at things that are being produced out there that are beyond the norm, I would say. He had a great talk around the FP Journe technical details yesterday. So stuff like that. And look, again, it's different tastes. Some people like simplicity. Some people like just, this is a basic Aquanaut to me. Maybe you like the blue, maybe you like the green. That's subjective, right? But yeah, look,
but it's almost like a fashion watch. We're talking about like AP, for instance, only has like the offshore and the Royal Oak. Well, Movado only has the museum watch. What's really the difference? It seems like there's not a whole lot of difference really between AP and Movado.
Yeah, like it design wise, right? Like it can be very similar. It's just, people look, like when you're paying for these pieces, right? That you're paying for a lot, and I think Professor will say this, you're paying a lot for the brand.
You pay for the brand. That's it.
When it comes to Patek Philippe, he's very much a harsh critic, I'll tell you, and he knows how much I love the brand, but he tells me I'm paying a lot of money.
The surprising thing is, Stan, he has some of the most expensive models from that brand.
Yeah, look, like, I mean, doesn't mean Professor doesn't like them. He just knows what's reality, right?
Well,
yeah.
No, it's like when, for instance, in our chats, we never talk about RM, right? Because it is out of the league for a lot of the reasonable people.
Yeah.
But RM is an interesting brand, but at the end, it's all run by AP. But the billionaires don't care. So it's all about what you're willing to pay, not about the brand. So what you're willing to pay. People will not buy Movado. A billionaire will never buy a Movado.
But then again, I know I've seen plenty of stories, news articles about millionaires and billionaires who eschew luxury watches, for instance.
Yeah, but they just don't care for watches, right? There's people like that who drive Honda Civics, right? They don't care about cars.
Yeah, Warren Buffett wears a day date.
Before that, he used to wear a Patek Philippe Calatrava. Before that,
so he came to his senses.
Saad would say the same. Saad would say the same. Forbin Colossus says, "Is it true Clyde tried to corner the market on Movado museum watches?"
No, actually, I've got a couple of Movado military pieces from military style pieces from the 50s, and this is before the museum watch. And Movado sourced a lot of their movements, a lot of their cases, from the same places Patek Philippe did. You could actually find Patek Philippe's that are very close in looks and components compared to like the older Movado pieces.
Rancher, what is your pricing strategy for your watch brand? Where will you place in what segment?
Who are you talking about?
You, yes, your watches.
Well, no, it's not my watch brand. I'm simply one among many. So that's committee, definitely ruled by committee, kind of like the Politburo, except with possibly a little bit more fashion sense. So, and it depends. The purpose of what we're doing primarily is not to sell watches. What we're doing it is to have the watches made that we want.
Well, we want Stella dials, Clivers. I
That's
want to
a
talk
noble
about Stella
cause.
dials.
That's a noble cause.
Yeah, it's a charity brand. Yeah.
We want to talk Stella dials. Saad, we have you.
I want to play an excerpt from Streetcar Named Desire, but I just don't. I know by the time I find it, you'll moved on.
Yeah, we moved on already, Clyde. So we're moving on to Stella dials. Stellar dials. Saad, we're showing a couple of different Stella dials. We're showing some day dates. We're showing some OPs. Saad, give us your take first of all on this. Obviously the OP craze of these colored dials versus the Stellas of the past. Do you like what Rolex is doing today with the OPs, or do you think they should keep the Stella dials classic for the day date?
100%. I would say that it's a very successful ingredient which should be only preserved for the best flagship model that they offer. And now they have started it actually. I think it's in the experiment phase, but the green dial with the 40 millimeter, that's also a lacquered dial. Uh, if you have noticed that it's not a matte finish. So they are, I think, introducing them. They might introduce these Stella dies again, but this time on the day date, apart from the OP. Here you see some white gold models, or there is one white gold, and most of them are yellow gold. So the special watch here should be the day date with the Jubilee bracelet, because again this is also a special order. Normally they came with either President bracelet or Oyster bracelet, and but I would say the green dial on the white gold is more rarer. It looks like 1803 white gold. It's not a platinum because you see the baguettes are not too long than the round ones. So uh, yes, the ox blood is also a rare dial. Ox blood is unachievable kind of thing these days.
Yeah, like look, these dials are just, to me very spectacular. I think that I would agree with you that I would like to see these mainly in the day dates. Because just look at this. Like, I don't know more perfect combo than the President bracelet in yellow gold. I think the 36 millimeters is a classic size. I don't, Clyde, you've had many day dates in 36, right? And you obviously wear large watches right now. Do you think it's a tad small? Would you buy something like this, Clyde?
No, well, okay. The problem I had with a lot of day dates, or not day dates, with date just for the 36, it's just simply, it's not really the size as much as it is contrast. Because the lack of, I hate it when Rolex does that, when they put a champagne dial in gold hands in an attempt to make it look as nice as possible, as cheaply as possible. It's not really the size per much, it's just crappy design. So
see if I can get this actual.
Also silver dial with white gold hands. Awesome choice, guys. Thanks a lot.
What about this, boys? What do you guys think of this?
Which one?
And also the Bradley Connor dials.
You know what?
Looks like half those.
Here we go, Saad. Here we go. What do you think of this, guys?
This is the white gold, same, right? This looks like white gold.
White gold.
So this is the 4-digit reference. You see, this is the pipe and dial. No quick set at all. So it was terrible, very difficult to set the day and the date on these watches, plexiglass models. But I think it's a unique piece, and blue suits white gold in some way, you know.
Do you guys remember there was kind of a fad to more or less take steel Submariners, and then they would somehow get their hands on the bezels and the dials from the Smurfs and just make a steel Smurf?
I vaguely remember that. It's a little extreme, you know, to Frankenstein like that, but
oh yeah, well, it's totally Frankenstein. But there's always been part of me that just always kind of had a little bit of a secret yen for that.
it's a little, yeah. I think it's just a little extreme, but to me, this is a beautiful, beautiful looking Stella dial. I'm gonna pull up a few more.
But okay, but it's a little extreme. But you're doing the same thing with the day date. So it's extreme with a Submariner, but it's okay with the day date.
Well, no, because these are actually factory made, right? Like these aren't Frankenstein watches, right? These actually came from Rolex. They were made by the brand itself, right? You're asking about buying a Smurf, which is a really expensive watch, and then fucking taking the dial out. And, because I mean, unless you can buy a Smurf dial.
Well, why can't Rolex be a little inventive when it comes to other watches like their?
Well, they were, right? And I think that's what we're highlighting is they were inventive in the past, right? Saad, what about this one? This is a pinkish Stella, I think.
Yes, and the unique thing about Stella dials was no two dials have the same color. Some have aged in a different way, and some lacquer, had different kind of coating. So you would see many versions of now this kind of pink. If it's called pink, you won't see another pink like this. There will be a difference in them.
CB says the blue looks like it's on platinum. We can confirm that one. So CB, it says here this is gold. This says this one's a gold one. It says a white gold Rolex day date. So maybe it's just a hue of the
CB,
the picture.
CB, the way to find out whether if it's a platinum or apart from looking at the bezel is that the 6 and the 9 diamond, the baguettes on platinum are much longer than what they offered on the white gold. So that's the quickest way to find out whether the dial was for platinum or was it for the white gold version.
I don't mind this blue.
This is this is the white gold.
Yes,
Correct.
yes,
correct.
You can find out a platinum just to make comparison for CV or.
Let's see if I can find a platinum here. This one's an 18206 day date. I don't know if this is going to be a great comparison. Let's see if I can find a better one here. This is a platinum Stella blue.
This is the platinum.
Yes.
But on the other hand, like I said, Rolex has a blue date just, and they have a blue day date, blue dial, and also white gold. They also have the same thing with platinum, but they're quite good at signaling which one is which by different iterations of the blue.
Clyde, what do you think of this bezel on this day date? This bezel.
So this should be 1807, or if it's a 5-digit, then it should be 18078. Reference to the bark finish on bezel and on the central links.
That is correct. 18078 from 1978. A great year for Clyde the Wrangler. He was not wrangling Rolexes back then, I don't think. This is a question for you, Saad. Has Rolex done a salmon dial?
Yes, I think yes, they have definitely done that. You have to find out. No, salmon, I'm not sure. You can check it.
Jonathan, you're getting old, Jonathan, if you can't go Iron Man a couple of streams, talk watches, because we all like talking watches. We're not here for the money. We're here for the fun. So, yeah, look, there's just a huge variety of Stella dials that, I think a lot of folks are just familiar with all these, Oyster Perpetuals that are, in bright colors, but Rolex has a long history, as you can see
Then the
here.
most difficult one to get is the yellow, Stella. You will see, lot of reds and greens, but the yellow is the most difficult one.
And do you think because they just weren't very popular to get, or just popular ordered at the time versus like, today? Here's a bark finish, yellow. Could just be
I
the
think I
popularity.
agree with you. This could be the reason that they were made in such small numbers, because it would be popular. Champagne looked 100 times better than this yellow. So people went for the champagne.
Rancher, you got a comment here for Mr. JQH the third. Tant, can you find the video when AC3 roasted Clyde for buying that H Moser when no one wanted them?
I
John,
actually think he liked it, which in fact hurt my feelings a little.
It's Jonathan, that might be very difficult. I didn't clip it. I mean, I remember him going after Clyde for buying the Moser at the time. I didn't dislike the Moser. For me, it wasn't a Fume dial Moser, was it, Clyde? I'm pretty sure it wasn't. It was just a
No.
Yeah. Yeah, it was an Endeavor, I think, that you got.
Mayu, I think.
Yeah, I see.
I wanted to say something to this gentleman, time wasting, that the beauty about watch collecting is that you can actually get people from very different backgrounds, regions, countries, continents to comment seriously about watches. And I think that Saad is probably the encyclopedia of the date for Rolex, undoubtedly. So to the gentleman referencing about making technical comments by Saad, I would welcome many others like Saad to join, but unfortunately we only have one Saad. So if you would like to join us, Mr. Time Wasting, you shouldn't waste our time.
Yeah, I didn't even waste my time reading it. But Thomas Broadbent says, new AP with turquoise dial could tweak action out of Rolex, or the mind share of watch designers will move in that direction. So Thomas Broadbent, this was a bit of a polarizing piece that was released this week. Yellow gold on turquoise, 37 millimeter AP Royal Oak. We talked about it on some of the streams. Saad, I think you weren't so taken by this watch. You didn't really care so much for the turquoise. Was that am I accurate in your assessment there?
Look, it's a special dial. It's very, very difficult to make, cutting that mineral. It's very delicate. So I definitely appreciate this, and I would love to have it. But when I compare these with the date turquoise, I think that was executed slightly better than this.
Yeah, and I'm going to show kind of a contrast here for all the folks. And Clyde, I think you might appreciate this. So this is a vintage AP Royal Oak 14701 BC from 1993 Bloodstone dial. Like I think this one is schmicko. I don't know. What do you guys think of this one?
Schmicko.
Clivers. Schmicko or...
let me ask you, Tanzil, if you want to get this watch, where do you get it?
Honestly, the only places I've seen these for sale are Chrono 24. And it's some dealer somewhere in the world who just got access to one. Because the reality is, Professor, AP did do stone dials for the Royal Oaks. They didn't do a lot of them. They exist. So I've seen there's Onyx that exists. There's turquoise, obviously, with the new one. Bloodstone here. They have a similar one. The Aventurine, it's not Aventurine, but the new kind of textured dial that they have on the new 16202 they released this week was made off of a former released piece that had a similar pattern. So they do exist. They're just very hard to find. But it's just more about, like, the question from Thomas Broadbent was just talking about, AP, Rolex could take a piece out of the book from AP here. And, obviously Rolex did it to a much more extensive amount with, all of their stone dials. Like Todd and I and we've talked about hours about this on the streams and stuff, about all the different types of stone dials that Rolex has done in the past. And which we appreciate. I don't know if they would be very mainstream out there for an appreciation. But hey, look, they are using that idea, for example, in the Oyster Perpetual. The question to Saad was, hey, do you think that that's the right move, or would you want those more in the high end day dates? And Saad was like, well, the day dates are probably where it should be.
Look, then the thing is, they made those Stella dials on their most under-recognized and most unliked models, and that strategy helped their Oyster Perpetual line to be one of the most sought out after models in 2000, whenever it was launched. So that was, from marketing point of view, a very, very strategic plan and very successful. I mean, nobody wanted an Oyster Perpetual. Until this date, you will never buy a Oyster Perpetual with a normal dial, white dial, and that crepe and other silver dials. It's a very ordinary looking watch, but this dial color made this line stand out, and it became extreme hype for the Rolex also.
Frank V is saying, Saad, I would love to see your watch collection and pen collection. Ask Archie to do a review. It'd be great to do it on a live stream, actually. It would be
Yeah,
awesome
definitely,
to
we can do that. Yeah, thank you so much,
Saad,
Frank.
We have so this is another question from CB. Saad, how do you feel about the 36 millimeter day date they made on leather straps?
Let us show us to CB. Pull out the reference number 118138. So they did this for a 118138.
Yeah, you're right. It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot of them. I'm just trying to find a good picture here for you.
So they did this in the mid 2015, something like that. The color of the dial matched the color of the strap. However, this was again not a very, very successful model, and almost never purchased by anyone. I mean, maybe, but it was not very successful. And the special thing about day date is it's the president bracelet. Other than that, it's actually 99% date, just with just a day window, nothing than that.
Yeah, I look, for me, it's the same. Do I think that this could be nice? Absolutely. Is it something I would buy solely without the president bracelet? No. To me, the president bracelet is the day date. For me, or you can't separate it. It's in the DNA. It's like a royal oak. You can put a royal oak on other bracelets, right? It's the royal oak needs the royal oak bracelet. To me.
And then the weird thing is, these watches are not cheap anyway, so why go for a leather strap? And you can always remove the president bracelet from your watch, add aftermarket and links, and just put a nice strap on it. You can do that with that.
Because Rolex is very greedy and a little lazy.
And Clyde, you've had many different bracelets, right? You've had a couple of day dates, right? What bracelets have you had on your? And have you ever had one on a strap, or have you ever put one on a strap?
No, I've always gone strapless.
And it was was that a preference? Did you just feel that the bracelet just amplified? It was part of the DNA. Why did you do that?
No, it's just like, if I wanted a day date, I want a president. I don't want a day date. So,
all right, this is a good question for the panel from Thomas Brabant. Thomas, you are given all the great questions today. I love it. Should the president bracelet be limited to the day date? Guys on the panel, what do you think?
Yes.
Professor, no question.
I think at one time it wasn't. You could find a date just with the president bracelet. You could find a GMT with the president bracelet. Of course, very rare you could find Submariner with president, but that was optional. And they also had the option of having Oyster bracelet on a day date, and that was not very rare thing to find. You could find them at the 80s. So, but president bracelet, and at one time, Rolex used to call this watch not a day date, but actually a president.
That is correct. That is very correct. Yeah. Jonathan's obviously continuing to talk about the high horology from Benjamin Chi with the beautiful cloisonné dials.
You can find $5 nice, crockery and chinaware with a cloisonné on it. So it's not something special. Higgins, you should, go for something else now.
I'm gonna showcase one of the Benjamin Chi. So this is another world timer. I think it's called, like, what was it, Sunset over Cappadocia or something like that. They called it. Higgins would know better than me. It's funny because if you look at this, am I sharing this? I gotta make sure. Yeah, I'm sharing it. You can see the Male part here, the time zone that Higgins didn't want on his world timer because it said male on it. He didn't like that. Different kind of, obviously city names, on it, than Higgins has, because in LA they picked Beverly Hills, and Higgins picked San Francisco, and whatnot. But interesting choices. But the dial layout here is different than Higgins. It has these
Then one question
balloons.
from you.
Mhm.
Apart from adding these cities, would you tell them to make a watch for you which has name of woman on it? So whenever you want to just have a mood for some woman, you just press the button and it,
If you're an international man of mystery who's been privileged to enjoy the company of women over time, that would definitely be a choice. We were able to bring you onto the stream, Jonathan. You said you didn't want to come on.
That is just
Oh my God!
that is just so cheap and simple what you're doing here. You're rubbing those celestial voyagers under my nose and think that I'm hopping on, and I'm stupid enough to do that.
Oh, the additional complication, which would cost a lot more money, is that you could also track for. Never mind. Forget it.
Jonathan, so I came across this one after obviously our conversation yesterday about Benjamin Chi. So I obviously started doing my research because you know how I am.
Yeah.
So this variation, because you obviously have yours with the country, the continents and stuff. Is it what's on this one called? It's called like the Sunset over What was it called?
Yeah, Sunset over Cappadocia.
Cappadocia,
is a picturesque area in Turkey, and they had that balloon festival, or still do, and that is a motive from them. From that.
So that was my question. Was going to go to lead in my question. So would Benjamin Chi, can he create something bespoke as the design in the center of the dial for an individual? Because obviously you did yours with the continents, and he did a completely different layout than a standard one. But could it be anything? Does it have to be continents? Could it be something else? Like if you lived in a city like New York and you wanted to do, the Empire State Building, and that was all you saw. That's pretty cool.
Yes. So I'm in conversation with a collector who has a very crazy motive to be done in cloisonné. I can't tell more. But yes, Benjamin Chi or the dial maker can do virtually any motive that you desire.
What part of the watch was done by Sven Anderson, and what part of the watch was done by Benjamin Chi?
Benjamin Chi did the design, and the watch is entirely done by Sven Anderson and their suppliers.
And Higgins, who was responsible for the strap?
Sven Anderson's supplier. Sad.
He should be fired.
They should go to Aaron Bespoke Combat. Clyde, you bought a strap, many straps, I think, from Aaron Bespoke and Combat Straps, right?
Yes.
Their straps are top notch.
10, I may drop off. I'm sending you a picture where I put an Aaron Bespoke strap on my Celestial Voyager. I'm sending you that via Apple Messages. If I'm dropping out, I will come back. Okay?
No, I'll get it. I just got to send it to myself on. I got to send it to myself on WhatsApp so I don't dox you, which I don't think you'd want. So yeah, just shoot that in and I'll send it to myself on WhatsApp so I don't dox anybody.
Give me 1 minute.
Myself. Yeah, no problem. I'll just dox myself, which is not a problem. Yeah, it's funny because when Jonathan was talking about the Male and it looks like male on the dial. But back to Saad's comment is like, if you were with a woman in every single city, would it make sense to put the name? You'd have to remember a hell of a lot of girls and know exactly which city they were.
Well, you know what the complication would be to have with a watch like that, right?
What would be the complication there, Clivers?
Something that you would time on a monthly basis.
Ooh, I don't think we want to get into that. Swinging Kangaroo, Jonathan, if you're still on, Swinging Kangaroo asks, what's the joke behind the strap? I think you can do this while I send myself the picture.
Well, Since I introduced that watch, people were beating me about the straps, particularly about the gray strap that is showcased on many of the publications. And I always stood strong, and I was defending it. But there are many people who don't like the gray strap, particularly the stitching, the contrast stitching, and how strong it is. But I'm still playing with alternatives. To be honest, I love the strap just like it is. And Swing Kangaroo, you and I know it's $350 to replace a strap. So it's not a big deal with a watch in that price region.
Beautiful.
And what kind of box are you getting with it, Higgins?
I'm getting a totally crazy box, but it's not ready at the moment.
Mike the Snake makes them also if you want.
Yes, I think after I've received mine from Benjamin Chi, I'll approach Mike the Snake to do a rendering.
You know, Higgins, the most beautiful box that I've seen for a watch was 5175 from Patek. It has a very grand, beautifully lined lacquered wood. Nice box.
This is a good comment. I'm going to get to this one margin call in a second. George Varghese is a great guy, so that's why I brought up this comment, because I do want to look at this. I didn't see his reveal yesterday. It's the Patek Philippe 5180G, best watch ever made. Pull it up. I'll pull it up in a second after Jonathan goes through this strap. So Jonathan, why don't you talk to us about the?
Let me step away for a second, gentlemen. Thank you.
No problem.
So,
Jonathan, Aaron
what you
bespoke.
see,
Yeah, go ahead.
what you see is a navy blue Aaron bespoke strap that I have for my Grand Seiko, and I have a second one, and so I was just test driving it on my watch.
This looks good, actually.
Yeah, look, Aaron, I've bought a bunch of straps from Aaron. Everything from alligator straps with big horns to your standard alligator to a ton of just regular straps that are canvas and other things. And it's always, the quality is just always very good from his straps. Is the lug, this is a standard lug width, like 20 millimeters?
19.
19. Okay, yeah, so it's normal. It's not something you can't you can't find. I'm gonna pull up this watch that Margin Call's talking about. Now Patek doesn't have, at least I can't find it, Patek 5180.
Before you go to the Patek, the best thing that Aaron made for me was a belt for my Hermes buckle. I always wanted an ostrich belt. I don't even think that Hermes is doing it, but he made me a black ostrich belt for my Hermes.
Oh yeah, Aaron does tons of leather work. He makes watch rolls. He'll do even artwork on it. So if you guys don't know, Aaron Bespoke combat straps. Many of us have purchased stuff from him. He doesn't sponsor the channel. He's not paying us any money. We're just people who bought his stuff and been very happy with it. I think the strap looks great. I do like the other strap that you had, the lighter strap, because I think it definitely brings out a lot more from the watch than just a standard darker strap. But
it stands out more.
It stands out more. So Margin Call says, can you pull up the 5180G? It was a watch that George Varghese unveiled on Tim's channel yesterday. Look, George Varghese is a great guy, amazing collector. He has an awesome collection, just a very humble and great collector. So George, if you're listening, we really love to chat with you and whatnot. I know George he bounces around some of the channels, so he may see this a little later. But before I pull up the G model, I just wanted to pull up the rose gold model, because I don't know if the G is discontinued from Patek Philippe. So it's a skeletonized movement with hand engraving decoration. So obviously a lot of handwork, hand finishing going into this. As you can see, it uses the 240 movement, micro rotor movement, which you can see here. And yeah, look, it's on a bracelet. You know, this watch is for somebody who wants something very special, something really handcrafted from one of the best manufacturers in the world. You know, I'd love to hear George's take on
Can
his interest in this watch.
can
Yeah, go
can I
ahead.
disagree with you? This
Sure.
watch is fucking awesome. You know, we're talking a lot about skeletonization, and then you're pulling up a Zenith or an Hublot or whatever. And as a matter of fact, all those watches are not skeletonized, they're just open worked. Here you can see skeletonization of the finest art. This watch is mind blowing. It's absolutely incredible. I wouldn't go that far calling it the best watch in the world. But if you're really serious into skeletonization work, this is where you go. And this is where Patek Philippe shines. I think Vacheron has similar craftsmen. But this is top notch. And this is what I call skeletonization and not the other stuff.
Yeah, I don't
Apologies for
disagree. Yeah, no, I don't disagree. It is definitely a very unique piece, and it's a piece that and not everybody's going to love. I can see maybe Saad holding back here a bit, and whatnot. But look, this is again different strokes for different folks, right? Like, earlier OC was like, well, I find that too plain, and then he says I prefer this one, which is just a different dial color, right? Like to everybody that can just be different to what people like and what people prefer and whatnot. Oh, we got a legend here in the house. We got the Rodent 3.0. Rodent, what are your thoughts on the 5180 skeleton movement hand engraved decoration using the famous 240 movement micro rotor?
Do I have to have a movement? Sorry,
An opinion? Yes,
opinion?
you do. Yes, you do. You've dropped
Okay.
many of my you dropped one of my Pateks, so you have to give me an opinion.
I think this one is, I would be a little bit more concerned about dropping, but at least you could see if something broke. So
Yeah,
there's
look,
that.
I don't think there's a ton of photos. Like, I'll just zoom in here just to see off of their main photo. And again, obviously, George, if you're around, if you have some some photos you could send us or whatever, that would be excellent. But Jonathan, what type of a collector buys this watch?
Well, certainly someone who has many high-end pieces, but someone who really appreciates the art of movement, finishing, decoration, the old fashioned way of doing crazy stuff. Personally, I could get rid of the metal bracelet. I think the watch would look much better on a leather bracelet. Not sure if there is an option, but the movement is just mind blowing, and the 240 is the micro rotor movement, which makes it even more nice. So I'm all for it. My friend Swiss will object that you can see the hairy wrist when you wear those kind of watches. I think Patek is on this shot are deliberately fogging out that area by showing basically the rear side of the
I
bracelet.
agree with Higgins. You have to wax your wrist before wearing this. Yeah, it's
So it
This is
too
a
would be
very
delicate.
something for Mr. GMT.
This is an interesting. So just the diameters, right? So 39 millimeter watch. It is an ultra thin, 6.7 millimeters thin. So it'll be a very thin watch to wear. But yeah, look, the reason I showed the rose gold is the margin call had mentioned white gold, and I couldn't find one on Patek's website, and the only one I could literally find was on Chrono.
Okay, on real
Here.
life, it looks too ugly.
Yeah, look,
Yeah,
not everyone's gonna love it,
This
right?
is for a 800-year-old person,
900.
900, without any hair and about to die.
Almost dead, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and look,
they can buy this watch if they're ready to die.
like
Yes.
this isn't for the collector themselves, right? Like, I don't want to insult George because he is a very good friend and he's a great collector,
No.
and he's got
Beautiful
a
watch.
lot of good pieces, right? He's
Beautiful
got
watch.
perpetual calendar chronographs from Patek.
Okay.
He's got Nautilus. He's got all the stuff that checks the box, right? So he's to put it into perspective, he's a guy who is buying things that really appeal to him, and you saw Jonathan, right? Jonathan got instant hard on one pull this watch up. Whereas if I pull up a Nautilus, he's going to be like, you know, not my cup
but
of
if
tea.
you have a perpetual, why bother with this one?
I think it's the craftsmanship, right? I think the individual was just looking for something that, you know, maybe they were looking for a truly skeletonized watch, and they like the craftsmanship of this piece, right? Like
Professor, this is a dying art. You don't know how long you have artisans who are able and willing to do this kind of stuff. And I applaud Patek Philippe for still offering those watches, even though you guys find it a little bit old-fashioned, which is a fair point. But this is a dying art, and I'm enjoying it as long as it's available.
As long as there is a market for them, they'll produce it.
Sometimes the artisans die out because none of the young
artisans die as
people
well,
want to
correct.
spend the time to do those.
Yeah, I'm just gonna show.
You know, Higgins, James Purdy and Sons is a 300-year-old brand, plus minus, and you know, when they had a master engraver back in the day, they were also. So I read somewhere they were very stressed. You know, what if there is always a replacement, Higgins? Remember this.
I hope you're right, Sad.
I just wanted to move on to.
Yeah, if the gentleman has other watches, if this is the only watch, then obviously he should give it back. But if he has other watches, no, that's fine. I understand. He's a true collector, and you know that adds to his collection definitely.
Yeah, he has plenty, but I'd rather spend 90,000 for this skeletonized watch than for a Patek Nautilus in stainless steel.
Well, that's exactly what I was saying, right? And maybe I wanted to pivot, Jonathan, because we got a lot of good panelists.
But Patek will be happy to sell you this watch. Yeah, it'll be easier actually to get this one than the Nautilus junk.
I got a couple of good people here that I think can give us a good take between Professor Saad, Jonathan, yourself, Rodent, and Clive. We've talked a lot about the Code 1159, the Audemars Piguet piece that they're putting a lot of their complications in, and also the quote, air quotes, entry level. I wanted to compare it to the Vacheron 56 in terms of what your guys' take is on whether did any one of these two manufacturers get it right in terms of the design of the piece, or I'm going to pull up the steel version here, the $15,000 steel version, which doesn't have a Geneva seal, or do you think both of them kind of failed here in terms of really, because these are two lineups that are new that they created to really take the brands in a younger type of a generation. So you guys know the 1159, we've talked a lot about it. I'm pulling up the 56 panel. What do you guys think? Do you think they both got it wrong? Do you think Vacheron got it right? AP got it right? What do you guys think?
You mean the AP that was recently released?
Yeah, I'll show the 1159. Just look at this one first, and then I'll pull up the AP 59.
Okay. This one is like a Seiko. They can keep it.
So he does not like this one. Anybody else? Jonathan, what do you think?
I'll give a longer. So the short version is I agree with Professor. The long version is I remember the Rancher when he was still on Archie's panel, and when the Oyster Perpetual were introduced with those double batons. He was on the panel, and he told us that sometimes watch brands are doing stuff to make deliberately watches look cheap. And I think this 56 is one of the cases. So they try to win a younger audience, but this watch is not allowed to look like a proper Patek VC because otherwise it will cannibalize their other pieces. And so that here you can see this kind of thing happening, and it happens unfortunately all the time also with other brands. My prime example, and I will stir now emotions up, is the Aquanaut. The Aquanaut was targeted to younger people. And in my opinion, and I stand with it, and I'm receiving a lot of flack for it, The Aquanaut is deliberately more simple and uglier than a Nautilus because it was not allowed to cannibalize the Nautilus. Now the tide has turned, and the younger people appreciate the Aquanaut over the Nautilus. But the intention and the concept of the Aquanaut was to be a poor man's Nautilus, and it was not allowed to look as good as a Nautilus.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. Now we do have a younger panelist, a little younger than I am.
Saad?
Who no, well, Saad and Rodin 3.0. Rodin 3.0, I think is he's a younger watch collector, and I know that he had seen, when this watch first came out, he had his opinion. So I'd be interested to hear from Rodin 3.0, kind of his take from a younger collector's perspective of like, do you like this one? Do you like the 1159? Do you think both suck? Like, what do you think?
Well, I don't think the problem that it's not allowed to look like a Vacheron, if we're going to go with that, I don't think that's a problem, because I think a younger person, which they obviously want to attract, isn't interested in a Vacheron anyway. Like they may kind of respect, they either don't have an opinion of the brand, or they don't have any motivation to spend money with the brand. And I think, like, price-wise, it's only really one model in the 56 lineup, which I am not even sure is the best seller or the most popular, that is really cheaper than the rest of their lineup. Like, the rest of the lineup starts at about 20K. The rest, only one model in the 56 collection, this one on screen, is cheaper than that. So I don't really see that there's a problem. I also don't think that people care about the Geneva seal. I think the watch looks fine. I actually think the watch looks really good. I do have some issues with the date window, which is always something I criticize watches about, because it indicates a movement that's too small for the case, which means, a lot of things. They're like essentially cutting corners. They're trying to beef the case up too much to attract a certain demographic, which maybe I disagree with. But no, I think the fact that it's different is good. And I think that the brand as a business, I mean, ultimately they have to evolve and attract new customers to survive. And Vacheron's been surviving for a very long time. I think it's something they have to do, and it's something that should be, risk-taking should be respected. And risk-taking doesn't mean you go and try to create a new market. It can mean that you evolve to cater to different people.
And to contrast, right? So it's really good points you brought up. To contrast, so you saw that one. Does it, this one, the date's in a completely different area here on this watch. In contrast, the AP 1159, better, worse, fail, epic. What do you think, Jen?
Should I go first? Or?
No, I just wanted to contrast Jen's statement. He just spoke about the Vacheron. I wanted to, he's got a younger take or a younger eye, I think, in looking at these watches. As a buyer, obviously this is more expensive. This is in gold, right? The other one I showed was steel, but let's assume that was the white gold version. You got a white gold version here, Jen. Like, do you think this is also a little bit fresh, or just not? It doesn't work.
I don't think
I'm not someone who's kind of an expert at attracting a younger audience. I can bring him on if we'd like to. Does anyone, by the way, mind talking about Grand Seiko?
No, we can go to Grand Seiko after this, Clyde. No problem.
Okay, let me get this guy then. Hold on.
Okay.
I don't
Go
think
ahead,
this. It doesn't work for me. I can appreciate why people would like it. The dial and the aesthetic is kind of a departure from what you would. I mean, AP is, you really only think of two watches when you think of AP. It doesn't really speak to me though. And it's not really a price thing. Like, okay, like someone could make a time and date watch that was 30 grand and I might like it. But this is, I don't know. Like the strap, it feels like it's aimed at a different person. I think that I'm more aligned to the person who maybe the 56 was designed for than this.
Hey Alex, if you wanna hop on, I'll drop the link for you here. Professor, you had a comment. If you don't mind going, you can definitely have the floor.
Yeah. So I like the effort, but definitely it's a supermarket effort. They want to produce at an entry level to get people into the brand, because this is the marketing that a lot of these companies are doing. They cannot get the overseas, they cannot get the Royal Oak, so get them into these and then have this history. A poor man is going to be paying 20, 30,000 to have a history, and they're going to be buying garbage in order to qualify eventually when they pay another 100,000 to buy the sought after piece. So it is a marketing thing. I don't see anything that adds to the, the flavor. I mean, Audemars is still very much a one trick pony, and they're trying to capitalize on that, but they still produce on the low end. Again, low end, at the high end of Rolex, they are producing at the low end, Audemars, and they're trying to appeal to a wider audience that cannot get the sought after watches. Certainly, with this iteration, they will be going above the 50,000 mark. So now they will be producing closer to 60 to 65,000 pieces. So they're no longer, oh, we don't produce so many amongst the three of us, Vacheron, Audemars, and Patek. Now they're getting into the Patek territory, which is closer to 75,000. So again, they're trying to do something with the not necessarily younger folk, I would say, but those who are trying to obtain and they cannot obtain. This is a entry watch for those who are trying to get with.
Oh, we got George. I couldn't believe we can get you on the panel.
I was just doing some errands, and I got a message on my Instagram that I was sought after on your channel. So I
You
thought
are.
I'd
Can I pivot right back? Can I pivot right back to your piece, please? I couldn't pull up the G version because it was discontinued, so I have the R version up. And unless you have a photo or whatever, but I just pulled the R version. So, guys on the panel, George Varhi is great, great collector. I've talked to him many times in the past. Has an amazing collection. And one of the people in the chat, George, mentioned that you just took delivery of a 5180G, and we were. It's funny because we're trying to psychologize you on the panel, like why would a collector buy this? Like, Jonathan was talking about how amazing the craftsmanship is in this piece. So if you don't mind, like give us a story, George. We'd love to hear it.
So basically, I consider myself a collector of watches, and I'm not an investor. I don't know that well to invest in watches. I buy what I like, I wear them, and I enjoy them. So this watch is definitely unique in my book, and it's unique in a couple of aspects. One, when I did my background research on this particular watch, it was basically stunning to me that I found out that it takes 150 hours of craftsmanship per artisan at Patek to make this watch, period. That is more than any of their grand complications by a mile. So you got that. The second is this is a real rarity out by Patek. Patek does not make many of these at all just because of the hours required by their artisans to do this. So literally every watch is almost a piece unique because no two watches can ever be identical. The third reason why I got it, to be honest with you, the MSRP of this watch was roughly about $110,000, and I paid about $73,000 for it, with box, papers, 2017 edition, which was the very last edition of the white gold watch. So it had been on my radar for a better part of 3.5 years. I just couldn't find one in a really good condition with all the box, with everything on it. So, and fortunately, I have a friend who's in the gray market industry, and he had a friend who took this in on a trade-in, and he wanted to give it to somebody who really appreciated Patek Philippe, and he reached out to his gray market friend, and he reached out to me. So basically, that's how I got this watch. And basically, that is the reason why I bought this. And it is, to me, I've owned many Pateks. I have Nautilus. I've got 5905, 5960s, down the line. So for me, this is one of my grails, to be honest with you, because I just see this in 20 years from now, 30 years from now, when all is said and done, you're going to look back and say, damn, that was an artisanal piece made by some of the greatest artisanal workers by Patek Philippe, and I should have got it. So that's my reasoning and thinking behind this watch.
And that's exactly kind of what I thought, George, because, I've listened to your story on Tim's channel around, you'd recently talked about how you'd sold your 5711, and you actually bought it around the same time I bought mine, which was in 2016. And at the time, like, it was the retail was like 24. We probably paid 25, 26. We paid a little over at the time. And then, you got out of it because you're like, hey, like, I'm not really wearing some of these watches. Let somebody else enjoy it, right? And your philosophy has always been, you've got FP Journes, you've got a ton of great stuff. And this is kind of what I was explaining to the panel was, this type of a collector that buys this, has kind of looked at all the standard stuff, kind of the check the boxes stuff, has gone higher than that, and then is really looking for something that, like you said, is unique, is art, something that speaks to you in a different way. I think some of the folks asked if you had a hairy wrist, because I think that was Jonathan's only qualm with it, was you just kind of see the hairs on the wrist, so maybe you don't have a hairy wrist and this works for you.
Let me be honest with you, I do have a hairy wrist, and it doesn't bother me one bit. I could care less, but you know how it is, Ten. You get to a certain point and you want to buy things that not the average person has when you get to a certain level.
Exactly.
And for me, this was one of those pieces. Now, I own a De Bethune. I own a Romain Gauthier, the Continuum 2, the DLC version. I go beyond the traditional Rolex, and in fact, I've only have like 3 Rolexes in my collection right now. So that's it. So, and as for, you were just talking about the code 1159, you know what? I own one, to be honest with you, and I love it. And I own the 1159 code, the burgundy dial, the stainless steel with the burgundy dial, and I got that at a great, great, great price in the gray market, and I love it. So, my tastes are eccentric. I like what I like, and I don't like to run with the herd. So that's just my collecting philosophy, and I think you're like that as well. So
absolutely, and that's why I have a great amount of respect, for somebody who collects, in just, doesn't, and my whole thing about live stream on YouTube is I try to break groupthink. Where if you see every stream out there, any given day you're going to go onto a stream and we're talking about a Daytona and a Nautilus and an Aquanaut, and it's just the same all over again, right? But to hear a story from somebody who said, hey, look, I did all that when I was younger and I expanded my horizon, and this is why I did it, because I think it's going to encourage a lot of people to go down the route of learning about finishing, go down the route of, looking at other pieces that are out there, whether it's an independent manufacturer, a new manufacturer. Like yesterday, George, I don't know if you're familiar with JJ's channel, but we were showcasing a lot of Benjamin Chi's work, and he actually was listening. I had no idea that he was listening into the channel, and he does a lot of cloisonné work and whatnot. I think he's based out of Singapore, and just talking about stuff that people haven't seen. And we were contrasting the cloisonné dial of the World Timer of the Swen Anderson versus, the cloisonné dial of the Patek Philippe's World Times and stuff like that. So it's always great to get a perspective on that. So I'm very, very excited that I was able to actually get you on the show, because the last time I talked to you, I think was like on the Dungeon, like, months ago, right? So.
Yep. And like I said, Tan, this is just for me a nice watch that I've been looking for, been patient, And when you get an opportunity and you get it and you're waiting, it's time to pull the trigger. I don't want to go through life like analysis paralysis. You know what I'm saying? Life's too short.
Exactly. You can't
Yeah.
live life like that.
Yeah. I'm not looking at it, flipping it tomorrow. I'm not looking at it, flipping it in 5 years. It's going to be hand down, given to my son, and he could decide what he wants to do with it.
Absolutely.
So it's just basically, this is an expensive hobby, and you and I and everyone else on this chat know it is. So just enjoy the ride.
So a couple questions. One from the chat here, from Thomas Broadbent. George, can you strap this? That people are asking if you would consider moving it to a strap as opposed to the bracelet. Is it possible?
Well, I do believe it is possible. I think there are some screws that attach to the bracelet, and I believe if you could get the right strap, I do think you can do it. But I probably wouldn't do it. I'll just leave it the way it is. I'm just afraid, you give this to the wrong person, they'll nick everything up and it's ruined, and I don't trust myself to do it. So.
Of course. And the second question was more for me, was the
Yeah.
thickness of the watch. This is an ultra thin movement. It's using
Yes.
the legendary 240 micro rotor movement, and it's
Yes.
ultra thin. It's about the watch is about 6.9 millimeters thick.
Right.
When you wear it on the wrist, like does it amplify to you just the visual appeal of it when it's actually on the wrist? Does it, thin watches? Some people like heft in their watches. Some people like thin watches. Kind of talk to me about the experience of it on the wrist.
It is actually, I've only had it for about 3 days now, and I wore it for a whole day after I got it sized at my jeweler's. And to me, it felt like I was wearing nothing, to be honest with you. Even though it's a gold watch, it really does weigh very minimalistic, in my opinion, because I have stainless steel watches. I have a platinum day, and it does wear very light, to be honest with you. And it has a presence about it, but it's not an overwhelming presence. And you could easily read the time on this. If you look at the watch around the bezel, you'll see bars, and those
Yep.
are basically hour markers, in my opinion, the way I look at it. And then at the 3 o'clock, you see the winder, and that basically runs the whole movement, to be honest with you. So that's,
Mm-hmm.
It's just beautiful, in my opinion. I could wear it, I can see it. I'm in my early 50s, so my eyes aren't as good as some people on the chat. So for me, it's like a really easily visible, and I could read it really clearly. So I hope that answers your question.
No, it absolutely does. It's actually kind of got me thinking. I'm like, George is not going to see Patience wearing this watch. I know for a fact you're not going to wear this in the office.
No, definitely not.
But I think this is an occasional piece, right? It's something that's special for you. Maybe you go to a watch meet, or
Right.
you're going to dinner, with some collectors and whatnot. I think it's a very, like, to me, it's something when I see this that I would cherish to see in person, because, it's funny because when Margin Call asked to pull it up, I was looking for the white gold, and I was like, I was not happy with any of the pictures that were there. And I was like, man, I just wish, George could, either he could send some pictures, or if you could just do like even a little video and send it to any of the channels, because I'll obviously watch, to see really the details is going to be, the devil's in the details here. And to me, that's why I kind of only pulled up Patek's website, because I'm like, look, this is probably the best way I could show it, because I don't want to show a shitty picture, because if I do, it doesn't do it justice, right? So
right. And like I said, Tan, I think if you had, $72,000 is a lot of money, but I would say this, for a Patek solid white gold with this type of engraving, the movement and the history behind it and the exclusivity, I think I could do a lot worse, So
for sure. I don't think you could do a lot better, to be totally honest with you. This is like, I think you hit it right on the head with that kind of money for this kind of work that goes into it, and like you said, significantly below what Patek would charge.
Right.
Like, I don't think you're going to find if you could say, hey, because it's interesting. We actually did this question yesterday on JJ's channel, where they said, if you had $70,000 to spend on a watch, what would you take? The entire chat, including the entire panel, basically, except for I think Jonathan, said some form of Patek Philippe, but it was like, 5172. It was, perpetual calendars and stuff like that, which you've owned. You own a perpetual chrono. I know that.
Yep.
But
Sorry to
Go ahead.
interrupt. This looks like a very sexy watch. Do you have any real life photographs so that we can see?
I can actually. I don't mind coming on. So if you give me a minute, I'll go get it. And
Sure.
I'll be
This
happy
effect
to
will
do
be
that.
better. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah,
hang tight.
that'd be a real treat. But yeah, like we were asking that question, right? Like $70,000, what would you buy? And we got your watches that a lot of people know, 1815 chronograph, perpetual calendar Patek. A lot of it was Patek, but I think here,
Tanzil, is this kind of groupthink?
it's groupthink in the sense of like people are looking at certain brands and they assume that certain brand pieces, like look, you said Rolex yesterday, right? You wanted a Rolex. Saad was saying Rolex. I think when you're looking at this kind of money, and I think, Professor, it's groupthink in the sense that we perpetuate the same brands over and over again on YouTube. And I'm guilty of this too, right? Everybody knows I'm a very big Patek fan, and I do love the brand. I think it's important to also, like you said, break groupthink and talk about other pieces that you could get out there for 70 grand. I think CB mentioned a Gronefeld in the chat at the time, so I thought that was cool, right? So whenever you see groupthink, guys, break it.
Breguet 3137. Look it up. Look it up. Not
Breguet 3137. This is Clyde's choice. Breguet 3137. Here we go. Actually, let me pull up. Do you want me to show the movement, or do you want me to show the front of the watch?
both, actually.
All right, so let's pull up the Breguet 3137. Oh, here we go. Sorry, I'm a stickler for decent pictures, more real life pictures rather than just pulling up the website. So Breguet 3137, right, was the correct reference. Clyde, you got a moon phase.
Slight derivative of the 3130, brought up by Daniel Roth. Daniel Roth to help bring Breguet back to life.
All right, George, let us know when you're ready. Sorry, Clyde. George is on the screen.
Yeah,
so.
I'd like to see this Breguet. I love Breguet as well.
Okay. Yeah, so Breguet 3137, Clyde, give us the take here.
Well, and again, it's a derivative of the 3130. The 3130 is where Daniel Roth, after being hired by the Chaumet brothers, the Chaumet the money, went into raided Breguet's back catalog of like hundreds of years and kind of brought some of their legendary pocket watches to wristwatch form. So again, classic power reserve, date, and of course a moon phase. But the 3130 had a plain solid case, not an exhibition case at all. But however, when Swatch took it over from the Chaumet brothers and kicked Daniel to the curb, they kept the design, but then they did a lot of work on the movement, which I think this movement. Now, go ahead and show the movement.
Let's see George's showstopper here now.
Yeah, we will. George wanted to see this as well. So here's the movement, Clyde.
And again, the amount of money this thing costs, I think the only reason why it's not astronomical is that it was the original. They still kept the original size of like 36 millimeters. But I have laid my eyes on this one in the middle, and it haunts my dreams.
I have no qualms in that. George,
that is the perfect. That is the, and I'm reminded of George's when I look at this thing, but this one is like George's. It's the perfect combination of gold and sex and magic.
And rubies.
And rubies.
Thank you.
Because George, we have a very
little nipple, so that kind of fits into the sex part. But sure, if you want to take
the big ones look better here.
George, we have a very South Asian panel here, so as you can tell, some of us do like our gems. So,
hey, I do too. So, yeah, definitely. So
all right, George, I'm going to make you full screen so you can show everybody.
So here we go.
Nice.
All right, get it out. Everybody see.
I'm going to have nightmares about that painting behind you now.
Yeah, that's Einstein, I think.
That is a Picasso, signed and numbered. It was his first adventure into the blue period, and that was a photograph, not a photograph, but a signed print and lithograph of his personal secretary.
He resembled Marcelo.
Oh. So, well, basically, here you go.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
There we go. Look at this. I love it.
So I'll take it off.
Well, unlike a lot of skeletonized dials, you actually can read the timing.
Also, Jonathan said it. He said this is a true skeletonized dial.
And I'll just show it to you.
What size is it?
39.
It is a 39.
Can you show the thickness? Yeah, just show. Yeah, exactly. There you go. Look at that.
Sorry.
Is this platinum?
I'm sorry?
Well, white gold. White gold.
White gold. Why does it shine so much? It looks like platinum. So beautiful.
So basically from the back.
Amazing, man.
Absolutely
The
amazing.
thing about this is if you look at the symbol, the Patek symbol, let me see, it's right over here by the 2 o'clock position. That's the only area where you could see the name Patek Philippe and then Geneva written on it.
Is it on the glass?
No, it is in the rotor itself.
Oh.
Yeah, this is using a very famous movement. This is the 240 movement. They use that in the perpetual calendar. It was an Archie's 5110. It is a famous movement they're using.
Does it have
Can
a
you,
rotor?
can you kindly put it on your wrist so
Yeah.
we see how it
You
looks?
can see it, like if we can zoom in, you can see it's Patek. I don't have any pointers here, but I can just show it to you, like right over, right there, you'll see the Patek Philippe symbol, and then on the rotor itself, you can basically just see their handwritten Patek Philippe, or it's like in cursive stuff.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, George. It's just a bit of glare on the rotor, so it's a bit hard.
Hard to see.
While George puts that on the wrist, I'll just pull up the super chat from JBJB. Great support of the channel. €5.99. Here is to haunting Cliver's dreams. Thank you, JBJB. All right.
So there you go.
Jonathan. I think Jonathan's being a little. I think he's being a little facetious. I think there's no. If I saw it on the wrist, I don't see a ton of hair coming through. So I think you're fine.
Then it looks like they have a different blend of white gold. Looks like some platinum or chromium added to it. It shines really nice.
So
I had it checked with my my jeweler. He put it under a like an analyzer to see what it's made out of, and it's well, obviously it's gold, and then he did say it did have a little bit of platinum in there. So saw right on that.
Beautiful piece, George. I just wanted to give you a big congrats for me. Like, this is really a treat for me to see.
So, anyways, that's the story behind this watch, and I'm glad I'm able to share it with a lot of my friends on this stream. I don't get.
Don't you have more watches here that you can show to us?
I don't have anything like the rest of them are in my safe box, and I would be happy to bring them. Whatever you guys would like to see, I'm more than happy to bring them on and show them to you.
It's been a request, George, from a lot of the fans here in the Archieverse that we'd love to do like a live, like just a live view, not even a review, but just just checking out the collection, because your Pateks, your independent watches, your FP Journes, like just are like outstanding, right? And
I'll tell you a funny story about the FP Journe. I was planning to sell it. I had an offer on it, and I was ready to sell it. And the gentleman I sold it was selling it to. He's like, I think you better keep it because you're going to regret it. And so I still have it, believe it or not. I was pulling the trigger on. I was moving along with it, and I was looking for some other stuff to buy, and I was kind of balancing it out. So it was one of those things, and I still kept it. Yesterday, I think on Tim's stream, I showed, I think OC knows, he was on the stream yesterday. I showed it to the guys on that stream, but basically when I purchased it, it was $36,000, and at that time it was January of 2020. I got it for $30 with a discount and 2 straps. So sometimes in life you just have to be lucky, like I said. So I'm happy to come on the stream anytime you want me to, Tan, and just kind of show you what the state of the collection is.
Look, I think what I see on YouTube, George, is, there's a lot of new collectors that are, buying, they're getting either into their first Rolexes, or they bought the whole hype collection of Rolex, and they're kind of looking for something more. And I think stories from collectors like yourself, and and other folks like CB, and other people out there, there's tons of great, great collectors out there, Boston Collector, other people that have, really diverse tastes in watches. To me, variety is the spice of life, and I think that is really important for live streams, on YouTube, because a lot of people consume their content from this, right? They don't necessarily read books anymore on watches, or even maybe even the odd Hodinkee article, right? It's really, this is how they consume a lot of their content. And for me, I always try to do my streams in this kind of a fashion where we're talking about, pieces like just like Clyde showed us here, the reference 3137 Breguet, where, professor was like, hey, is it a bunch of groupthink if everyone's just naming Patek Philippe in their $70,000 watch choice? And then Clive was like, well, hey, let me pull this up, and this is something that reminds me of what George is talking about, right? So to me, it's a real treat. Like, whenever you can do that, I'll drop you my number in the private chat if you want to. You and I can connect on WhatsApp, and it's just, I think, to me, very, very important to do streams like this.
I have but one question.
Yeah.
Didn't George V actually die in 1935?
Our good friend George Varghese, who's George V, aka George. You may get the nickname George V.
That's
now,
all right.
George, one question for you. I asked the panelists real quick, just to pivot off of the Patek, because you mentioned you had the code 1159,
Yes.
and
I still do.
And you still do. And I wanted to contrast it with the Vacheron 56, which was Vacheron's attempt at modernizing their lineup, and just like AP was doing, just a fresh new line. Where as a collector, does this speak to you? Does it not speak to you? What would be your thought process if you were choosing between an 1159 and maybe a 56?
So for me, I'm not a real. I had one Vacheron my entire life, and that was a patrimony, and I gave that to my father, and I've never owned one since. If I take it back, I did own a overseas in the black dial that I had for about 3 months that I got rid of. So after that, I've never owned one. And to me, I think Vacheron, I would much rather own the code 1159. I think everybody that knows me, I'm not a big AP fanboy by any stretch of the means, but there's something about the code 1159, in particular the burgundy dial that I have. And I have a Parmigiani, also a Tondograph GT in their new release in the burgundy dial. I just love something about the burgundy that's, is really nice to me. I think they are doing so much more. I like to have a little bit of color in my watches or something special. This looks to me very humdrum, and I'd rather just buy a nice Breguet, to be honest with you, versus this. I think most panelists would agree with that, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree. I think that it's.
Why didn't you get this when you get a quality ill? Sorry, but that's the way I see it. I know. Jim Tinkler hates that watch, but I think the quality ill compared to this watch, there's no comparison.
Yeah, that also is when you're going to go in the traditional lineup with Vacheron. You come across pieces like that, and look, like a lot of folks see Vacheron, just like you're describing, Clyde, in that sense. And I think it's just because, a lot of these brands, they've just gotten a bit stale, right? Royal Oak, we see how many Royal Oaks all the time come out, or Rolexes with their staple pieces, or Patek with its Nautilus and Aquanaut, and just kind of doing different variations of it. So both Vacheron and AP said, hey, we're going to create a new lineup. Because I don't think Patek's done a new lineup at all. You got the Calatrava, you have, because even the weekly calendar is a Calatrava, is what it is. It's not a completely new line. Whereas Vacheron and AP did completely new lines, which were arguably meant to get maybe a younger crowd into the brand. Because I don't know if you saw the article yesterday, George, on because I was telling OC this yesterday when him and I were streaming together. Was we're our watches are registered with AP, so we get the emails, and the only email AP sent out yesterday after all their watches was about this Universal 23 complication, super complicated watch. And the one thing that struck me about this, outside of the fact that the complications are a bit embellished, is, this actually really works with the 1159. And it really, if I look at the design of this watch, and this is not the this is the open work version, not the regular dial version. But when you think of a super complicated watch, you generally think, traditional. And I use the comparison here of let's look at its competitor. That's what the watch looks like today. But let's look at these guys' competitor in that piece, and it's this watch. It's the Grandmaster Chime, right? Which is extremely traditional. So I can appreciate AP going for a younger look, using that platform as really their springboard to put in all these ultra complicated watches, because I do think it's going to appeal to a demographic. Maybe your son grows, a few years, 10 years, 20 years down the line, and says, "Hey, Dad, I'm not really into this Grandmaster Chime, but this other watch that's 23 complications really floats my boat," right? So that's what I appreciate about the 1159. I don't know if you guys agree or disagree.
You had to really suck about that. What if that didn't have a quick set? So they're turning the knob for like 3 years straight.
You know what I like about AP the most is that they're pushing the envelope a little bit. They're going beyond their comfort levels. And that's a sign of a brand that's actually maturing, to be honest with you. They're going to have their ups and their downs. Their 1159 for, very controversial and perhaps not their best effort. But you know what? They're pushing the envelope a little bit. And that's good. And I think every brand needs to do that, to be honest with you. Not just change the dial color on a Daytona or on a Sub and call it a new watch. It's not exactly, in my opinion, the use of funds, but at least AP is pushing it a little bit. And you got to give them credit for it. Would I buy one of these? It would just depend. I have to try it on, and unfortunately, I don't have any AP dealers or ADs anywhere near me. The only APs I've ever bought, I had just bought the 15202 just recently through the gray market that I got a pretty good deal on, and I frankly love it. And to me, that is the epitome of what an AP is. So I have to try these on, to be honest with you, before I commit to this kind of money to buying an AP.
Kuslowitz makes a good comment. So Kuslowitz is a younger collector. He works in Hollywood as a cameraman. So he's always kind of asking, like, "Hey, what high-end watch can I wear that it's functional, right?" And I said, "Well, I wouldn't wear a 5196 on set." But he's saying, "I love how AP is pushing the modern look. The star wheel is exceptional, right?" Because if you look at the star wheel from the 90s.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Star wheel. Yeah, that would be one I would buy for sure. That is a nice looking piece.
And he says Patek needs to catch up to marketing to customers under 50 years old. And look, I'll show you one watch here that I think is a real hit in terms of what I would say a younger collector. And I'm in my early 40s, so I'm not young by any means. But this piece here, I'll show this tab. This update of the Calatrava, in my opinion, really hits the nail on the head. You see the traditional, but you have the hobnail part on the side. And you've got this textured dial with the syringe hands, which shows a bit of classical, traditional Patek, but also this is a Calatrava. This is supposed to be the dress watch, right? But this could totally be something you wear, business casual, just walking around, that I think is really would attune to a younger buyer, in my opinion. George, have you ever seen this piece directly in person? Like, what would be your thoughts?
This is a beautiful piece, in my honest opinion. This is really nice, really nice. I wouldn't turn this down if I got this offered to me. So,
because and the reason I say this, guys, is the story of the Calatrava was when Thierry Stern was updating the Calatrava line. This was the piece that he created. And this was maybe 7 years ago, when he created this piece, the 5227 is the update to the 5127, and to him, he was contrasting the 3919, 5119, or the now modern 6119 with the clou de Paris or hobnail bezel, saying to the media that that watch is not a watch that say a young man should wear or could see a young man wearing. And what I want to do is create a Calatrava for the younger generation. So this was his modern version about 6-7 years ago, of what a young person should wear. But to me, in this day and age, it could just be seen a little traditional. And again, right, I think that the 622, the 5226 is really the Calatrava of today for the younger guy, in my opinion.
So if I could just tell the story real quick. So I've
Absolutely.
been watching Archie for so many years, and you were saying a while back, Tan, about like how we influence people. Well, he influenced me because the first Patek that I've ever bought was the 5035 Rose that he had. And
Yep.
the 36.
The annual calendar. Yeah, the annual calendar. Yep.
Yeah. So that was my first watch that I ever bought. And the second Patek I've ever bought in my life was the 5227G.
Yep.
And I still have that. And so, it to me, we influence people. Archie's a huge influence on what I purchased. And so you're absolutely right. And the 5227G, I think, is still the quintessential modern day dress watch, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and look, they've upped it. So that when I say the 5119, right, that was the hobnail bezel, clou de Paris bezel, and they've updated that now to the 6119 with an updated movement. They used to have the 215 movement, and if you ever see the case back of a 5119, and that watch is a 36. The 215 even looks big in a 36. It's really made for a 33 millimeter watch, where they've updated the movement here to actually fit the size of the actual piece. This is their modern version of that, which I think is also pretty fresh. I'm actually waiting for the 96 version, the 6196, without the clou de Paris to come out, because I do want the updated movement. We've got a super chat here from Trading Profits, £1.79. Thank you for your donation, Trading Profits. Ken, what are your thoughts on the 5212? It's young. For those that haven't been watching the streams for the past couple of months, I'm going to pull up the 5212 for Trading Profits here. Amazing piece. This is the complicated Calatrava weekly calendar in steel, 40 millimeters. One of my favorites. I'm actually trying to hunt this down in Canada. My issue is, George, is importing watches from the United States to Canada includes an 18% tax and duty. So, a watch that's trading very close to retail in the US becomes very expensive for me to bring into Canada. And we just don't have a ton of Patek ADs here. So there's not a lot of stock. So I'm actually actively hunting this watch, Trading Profits. So, if there are any Canadian viewers watching who want to sell their 5212, I'm a buyer, but I'm a big fan of this watch. The big part for me, guys, is also the story of this watch. If you see the script of the watch, if I can pull this up here, maybe it can give me a bigger picture, or I'll just zoom in. The script on this watch is important because looks very vintage. The designer of the watch, they actually used his hand script to print on the dial, which is pretty cool to me. And you can see it looks handwritten on the days, the months, the number of the days, etc. on the dial, which is really cool. But again, this is also polarizing, right? Some people think it's too busy. Some people think the complication is useless. Why do I need to know? We're in the 33rd week of the year, right? But OC actually came on the show a few weeks ago and said, hey, in a lot of industries like retail, people, it is important to know what week of the year you're in. So there is a need for, in certain people's line of work, that it could definitely be very, 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 very relevant. So that's my take on it. George, I don't know, do you like the 5212? Do you hate it? What are your thoughts?
From what I read, I believe aren't each of them the dials all done individually? Is that correct, or am I mistaken?
I don't know if they're done individually. Maybe they are. I haven't read that, but maybe it's possible. It's not to say it's not.
Yeah. And I read somewhere that each dial is unique. So basically, every dial is unique unto its own, because the pen and everything is at a different thickness, and The lines may be a little bit different. So no two watches, no two 5212s are the same. That's what I read, but I can't confirm that. So
Yeah, so Kelslowitz is right here. So the typography was supposed to be just for the prototype. So this was the designer who just kind of presented it to Thierry Stern, and Stern loved it so much that he actually decided to keep it for production. So that is actually the story. Now, whether it's all individual, you know, I'm gonna probably do some research after the show myself just to see. I don't know if America 5524 is in the. Oh, he is. Hey, America, how you doing? The 5726 is the pinnacle of the Nautilus line. George, you and I both own Nautili. What do you think?
I would agree with that. That's pretty much it for me.
You have no resistance from me on that, America. Nice to see you.
Yeah.
But look, again, right? It's different strokes for different folks, and you know, to me, I don't ever try to. I just try to really learn the thought process of a collector, right? What drove you to buying a piece? What do you love about it? You know, because to me, I've made the mistake over the years collecting where I'll tell you two watches I hated in pictures. One was the Reverso, and two was the Royal Oak. I absolutely hated them, you know, and I was just like, yeah, not for me. I fortunately made the decision whenever I was either at a boutique or an AD or a friend had one to try them on, because I like to try on everything, and completely changed my mind, right? I was completely blown away by how much I enjoyed it, that the look on my wrist and whatnot. So I try never to just use my gut feel on things like, oh, I don't like it or I like it. I try to take a step back, take it with a grain of thought, a grain of salt, and just, you know, really try to understand, because I think that's where the story of your piece, you know, with it being skeletonized and the amount of hours that it took to put into it, really comes into perspective of, if you're looking to buy art, something that you could take, you know, on, you know, anywhere you really want to go, you know, to me is super important. Another super chat here from Stuart Crook, £2. Black Bay 58 or old Seamaster for newbie first purchase? I'll go first. I'm actually wearing a Black Bay 58 right now. Black Bay 58 blue on a strap. I've owned the Seamaster 2220.80, which is the Bond from Casino Royale, coaxial movement. I've owned a lot of Seamasters. You know, for me, honestly, I would probably go something. I'd probably go something a little bit more modern than those pieces. I think you're just, you know, modern watches are really good. There's nothing wrong with it. And there's such a vast amount of them that you can buy in a price range you're probably looking at, Stuart Crook. So personally, I'd probably go for that, unless you have a real nostalgic reason to purchase a older Seamaster. There's a lot of gripes around it. Some people hate the scallop bezel. A lot of people hate the bracelet. I do love the dial on those. But obviously growing up, you know, a kid of the 80s and then growing up in the 90s, like, you know, Pierce Brosnan and Bond, that era does also speak to me. But for me, Black Bay 58, panelists, anybody else disagree, agree? What do you guys think?
Black Bay 58 for me. I've had the Tudor, the Harrods Black Bay, and I love that. So I can't go wrong. Nothing bad to say about it. It's a beautiful watch.
Amazing. Clivers, you've owned. Hopefully you're still here, Clivers. You owned the Black Bay 58 Blue right when it first came out.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've owned a bunch of Seamasters, right? Like, what do you think?
No, well, actually, like an original, like early, like birth year Seamaster. So nothing close to anything current. I've seen. There's actually one of our newer DAs has like a early 2000s Seamaster, and I think it's a great, you know, one of the first bezel ceramic bezels. I thought it great looking watch, but the comment, you eventually sold the Black Bay 58. So okay, but Kelswitz basically says go with the Black Bay 58. Vintage is a minefield.
It can be, right? Like, look, 90s Seamasters, are they really vintage, right? Like, is it really considered vintage in the 90s?
Well, but the thing is, though, there's basically two types of vintage. You've got the safe queens, the rare examples, and you've got the ones that actually people have been consistently wearing for decades. The only problem is what happens when you have someone that doesn't know what they're doing, has one of the wearables and tries to sell it as a safe queen, like as all numbers matching whatever, and tries to
McLovin's comment, Rancher, he said Seamaster, not sundial.
Even before that, I'm sorry, I'm going to touch you in the face. But the real original. But I think the problem only comes is that is uneducated seller, uneducated buyer, not knowing what they're doing, or the absolute worst combination is both. But it's possible to, if you get a wearable or a wearable vintage, it may not be in the best condition. It may not all be original. They may have had the hands replaced like 3 times. But to me, there's kind of a joy and a beauty in that. And like a vintage watch that's been on someone's wrist for 40 years and that will be on yours for 20.
I pulled up the watch that I used to own, the Casino Royale Seamaster. First coaxial movement for this one, I think, and it's got the old wave dial. Again, right? Like,
why can't Rolex do a Submariner like that?
Look, I mean, I would argue that the scallop bezel is just not, even in the new ones, man, they're just not, like, I don't like them. And the bracelets, like, they need to update that bracelet. Like, I understand the vintage part of it to the 90s, but, like, just not, they need to update this watch. I think they've done a lot better job in other models that I'll pull up here. But, yeah, like, if I were to say a first-time collector, get the Tudor, man. Like, you're just going to get, you're going to get something I think that's going to be pretty, it's going to be pretty nice for you. And you're not going to have to really worry about, like Clyde said, if there is some vintage issues, which I agree with Ron too. I don't think you're going to find neo vintage issues, but it's possible, right? Let me pull
and I've got to go. I just had a wisdom tooth pulled yesterday, so I'm going to go take some and go lie down. But yeah, I'll be happy to come on. You have my email. I'll be in touch with you. I got your phone. Anytime you want me to come on, we can make a time, and I'll bring my watches and we can have an afternoon or whatever. I enjoy it. Great to see a lot of good friends on this channel. If I could just say hi to a few of them. Ron the Shrink, love you, Ron. You're the best. Tom Broadbent, MCM. He's a true legend. He should be on here showing his watches. Kess Lewis, he's really a cool dude. You got a lot of great people, and don't forget OC and Saad and Clivers, everybody else, including yourself. I appreciate the time, and looking forward to seeing all of you guys again. Okay.
We appreciate you obviously sharing your beautiful watch. Congrats again, George. I'll be in touch. Thank you so much. And
anytime. Thank you, George.
To help
Enjoy
you out.
Your watches.
Thank you for sharing your watch.
And you too, Professor. Take care.
Take care.
Thank you, Your Majesty.
We've got a $2 super chat from the original OCD saying, great job, Tan and panel. Happy Saturday to all. Thank you, OC. Hopefully you were well. And yeah, you and I can fight everybody who's saying our Royal Oaks are not high horology. I did want to show this one here, Clivers, as a Seamaster alternative. What do you think of this one here? The Heritage Seamaster as an alternative to the classic Seamaster Professional 300 that everybody knows.
Sorry, taking a quick phone call.
No problem. For me, this is a lot more, I mean, it's not modern, right? They're obviously using a vintage inspired design. I just think it's a very cleaner version of the Seamaster, something that would appeal more to me. Everyone asks about the faux vintage, the faux patina. And I say, look, guys, we're so desensitized by this now. Like, everybody hated it when it first came out, but I'm so desensitized by this.
Tom, I shared in the private chat an interesting article.
Sure, let me pull it up here.
On Bloomberg.
The Bloomberg article?
Yes.
All right, let me pull it up here for you, Professor.
And in the article.
Oh.
I'm telling me I have to subscribe. No, I can't view it. If you're subscribed, Professor, I can just pull up your screen.
I'm subscribed. I am subscribed.
Yeah, all you need to do is just on StreamYard, you just need to go to the present and then present your tab, and then it'll pull up just the tab itself.
Ted, I'll send it to you on iMessage if that will help.
I'm not actually on my Mac. I'm on my PC. Yeah, I'm not on my Mac right now. I took my PC laptop upstairs.
How do I do present?
So in the StreamYard screen,
okay.
Yeah, you just click present and then present your tab, and it'll show the tab.
Hard.
And I'll add it in. Keeping dog trainer out of it. I love the dog trainer. He's a good guy.
Okay.
In the meanwhile, I will say that I'm a big fan of the rancher's energy. He's always very, you know, charismatic and
Are we
The
there?
first version.
Okay.
You just need to click present your tab. So when you click present, and you got to say share the tab.
Oh,
Yeah, and then
Share.
it's going to pop up on my screen, and I can add it.
window Chrome.
Subscribe now for unlimited access to Bloomberg.com and the Bloomberg app.
No, I don't think I have it.
Okay, no problem. So, Professor, maybe we know the headline here, so maybe talk to us about the headline. Independent watchmakers surge as Rolex Patek remain unattainable.
Yeah. So the point here is that they're talking about the independence, right? The point about groupthink. Unavoidably, the argument is that when they present to people, to the wider public, not to the community, which is whatever, few thousands, but to millions and millions of people. I mean, articles by Bloomberg are read by more than 100 million people, right, out of the 8+ billion who live in this world. And they talk about Groibel, Forsey, Gronfield, Voutilainen, Philippe Dufour, right, de Betum. It no longer becomes a discussion about I will get the special watch. There is no special watch. There is an expensive watch and a super expensive watch. And if you have money, you will buy these watches, but they're not really unique. This is my point. Once you reach the level of publicity of a Bloomberg article, there is no uniqueness in that way. I would actually argue that there is background noise.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay.
I'm sorry. I
go
was
ahead.
running my stamp. Sorry, I was running my sheet stamp press in the background.
Oh, I wasn't sure if it was me or not.
Yeah, I think the point is that as people who are in the community begin to move into the bespoke watches, that could be a trend, avoiding the group thing. But Tan, it's impossible not to be group thinking. If you have somebody like Bloomberg and Hondinki and everybody else talking about independence, there will be so many people who have a lot of money who will move into the independence, regardless of groupthink or no groupthink, because they want to all feel unique, right?
Yeah, makes sense.
And that's the point to be made. And I think the uniqueness is on the owner rather than do I have a watch that is unique? You make the watch unique, not the watch making you unique. Right? This is all the marketing that goes around all these watchmakers. But the other thing I wanted to say is that about the youthness of some of these pieces, I think some of the watch manufacturers are clearly not interested on the youth element. What they're interested is regions, continents, and clearly there is a preference for the Asian continent because that's the future of the world economy. I mean, in 10 years from now, China will be the largest economy in the world, and they buy watches. And when they buy Pateks, I mean, they buy the entire boutique. You've been to the Patek boutique in Geneva. If you go to one of these boutiques, you will only see Chinese and occasionally an Arab, a Gulf Arab. But usually the Chinese, when they buy $2-3 million worth of watches from Patek. So what we're talking about here, Calatrava and all that. This is nice, but the market is shifting towards Asia. And now that it has opened, I mean, they will start buying a lot of these pieces.
How can you tell a Gulf Arab? Is he like wearing cleats or maybe a floppy hat or what?
No. It's the Gulf Arab is distinguishable from the dress. And also, if it is a lady, they use a lot of perfume, and it is really the oud perfume. So it's that fragrance that distinguishes them, and usually they bathe in it. So the
Yeah.
entire boutique smells oud. It's not just that area where they sit. And they go in armies of either men or women, and they take the shelf off, and they just buy everything. But the Chinese are predominant in that. I mean, I was recently in the boutique, and I saw 6 Chinese and a Gulf Arab. So, I didn't see any other nationality, unfortunately. No Swiss, of course, because Swiss are they don't buy Swiss watches. They buy the cheap ones, but they certainly don't buy Pateks.
So your belief is that the brands are targeting specific regions, and look, this isn't unheard of, right? Like when we talk about stone dials, right? Like those specific types of dials were marketed to Asia, South Asia as well. In that, the brand like Rolex thought that the customer in that area of the world would purchase those specific types of dials, and that's where you do see some of them out there. And I think Saad has encountered them a lot more than I have, for example, here in North America. So I don't think that's a far-fetched assumption, Professor. I think in the groupthink part, look, whether you can defeat groupthink or not, I think to me, I don't think your premise is incorrect. I think that doesn't, just because it's something that can't happen, it doesn't mean that, at least in my opinion, what I do is I try to still ensure that we can try in that aspect to give other perspectives, because look, I'm not going to change everybody's opinion. The Rolex collectors are going to be the Rolex collectors, and not everybody collects for hype. There's lots of Rolex collectors like Bear, who doesn't necessarily only collect hype. He collects a lot of different Rolexes, and I know people that just collect all different kinds of Rolexes. It doesn't mean that they're just chasing a specific model. For me, it's around variety. It's around expanding people's experiences and horizons in watch collecting itself, and that's kind of what I try to center my themes around. The streams I do.
Yeah, my point is that it's very difficult to avoid groupthink, and it's nothing wrong with that. I like 1 or 2 brands, and that's okay. It's impossible, however, in this market of social media, of one following the other, to be unique in that sense. This is all I'm trying to say. Once you go into that rabbit hole of saying it's unique, it's not unique. I mean, it's unique in certain ways.
Tan, I agree with you. Upon reflection, I think we should defeat groupthink. Hey, Saad, you want to help us defeat groupthink? Hey, everyone on the panel, help us defeat groupthink.
Then we're all going to be doing some groupthink. Clyde is a smart individual. Look, guys, I'm going to round off because we're going to hit the 3-hour mark, and it's been a little long for me. I know JJ is doing a stream in about an hour, and I can't link it because I'm not ArchieLuxury, unfortunately. So I'm going to stop here in 3 minutes. Closing remarks here, Clivers. You go first. Give us the closing remarks for the stream, please, and thank you.
Everyone join up so we can defeat groupthink. Thank you.
There you go. Saad, final thoughts.
I think.
Hey, what are you doing?
Thank you.
Saad says, I think, and thank you. Professor, final remarks.
But we're ending. No, that's right.
I don't have anything to add.
Professor has nothing to add. And I'm going to use a page out of Clive's book. Let's enjoy our watches, and let's all be good to each other. I want to thank everybody on the panel. I want to give a huge thank you to George Varghese for sharing his amazing new acquisition. And, we will see you guys hopefully next time here on the ArchieLuxury channel. Thank you guys so much. I'll run an outro for us here, and we'll see you next time.